I think you see it every week.
People have to do it with their
Okay.
laptops.
I'd like to call the meeting to order.
Thank you.
It's 6:38. The first thing on the agenda is going to be an action item to determine the superintendent's search committee selection process. If you look at the packet that you have before you, the second page tells the recommendation that the superintendent gave us. And I want him to review it again, and then we're going to discuss it and vote on it. So if there's any changes that you want to see or any comments that you want to make, we'll do it right now. Yes, Ann. Ann,
Oh, no,
speaking.
I'm just
Oh,
holding my hand in the air.
Yes, Ann.
I was wondering, I'd like to make a motion, I don't know if anyone will second it, but we have a group of 11 here. And there's one administrator, which could be a principal or a central office administrator. I would really like to see 2 administrators, one being a principal and one a central office administrator, considering they're 2 very distinct positions. And to make it an odd number, to make it, I would like to add another parent, and that way we could have maybe a high school, middle school, and 1 elementary school parent, so that would even out the, keep the same proportions of administrators, or I'm sorry, the staff and the parents and community members. So I'm going to make a motion that we add those 2, change administrator to 1 principal and 1 central office, because I see central office as being somebody like a director of instruction or a business administrator, who I think would be vital for the search committee, and I think a principal would be as well. You have to think that a search committee is not only somebody who's going to be questioning and asking questions of the candidates, but also going to be answering questions of the candidates. And certainly it's really important to have people from different parts of our school district there to answer those questions and to represent our school. And if we don't have anyone, let's say if we don't have a principal there to answer the questions, or if we don't have a central office administrator, I think we would be seriously lacking. So I'm going to just make that motion and keep my fingers crossed that somebody will second that. It would only make it a committee of 13, and I do recall Ken saying that he could definitely handle a committee of 15. So this is below that number.
Any seconds?
I'll second it, just second it.
Okay, there's discussion on the issue.
In Ken's initial recommendation to us, he recommended a committee of 9 or a committee of 11. And going to a committee of 13 was not in his initial recommendation. So I guess if we look at this original list that we have here, how does that differ from what he had originally proposed as 11? And perhaps you get satisfaction by looking at how he had recommended the group of 11 be formed.
But he also did have in his initial recommendation a central office administrator and a principal.
Right, so let's look at the 11 that he recommended in his original proposal, and so how did he come to 11 with having those 2 positions?
Well, he had other titles in here,
Mm-hmm.
so I don't think you can give an exact answer. He just recommended 9 to 11. And the makeup we put together based on Leon's, the superintendent's recommendations. And I'm not in favor of it. I think that 11 is we discussed it, it was recommended, it was hashed out before that 11 would be close. We had 12 on the last search committee for a superintendent, so 11's very close to that. And I see what Ann's trying to put forth, but maybe we change around the teachers. Instead of having 3 teachers, we have 2, and we have two administrators, one being from the high school or from the ranks of principals, and then one from the central office. That way we'd keep the 11. Any further discussion? Okay, we're going to vote on her motion. All those in favor, say aye. All those opposed? Okay, it's 1 for and 3 or 4 against. Okay, moving on. I'd like Leon to explain how, why he recommended the way he did.
At the November 14th work session with NESDEC, the school board determined the composition of the superintendent search committee to consist of 11 individuals. And that composition is as follows. We have 1 administrator, 2 school board members, 3 teachers, 2 parents, 1 student, and 2 community members. And looking at that, today's meeting was to come to some determination how these individuals would be selected or appointed. I've spoken with Ken, the consultant from NESDEC, and I put forth recommendations for you to consider and adopt this evening. For the administrator, well, first of all, as you know, on your work session on December 5th, you'll be determining the dates and the letters that will go out to the various groups. So it'll be important on December 5th to identify the times and the dates so that groups who are individuals who are elected or volunteer will know the commitment that is required, because it's going to be important for them to attend all those meetings on the screen. So there'd be one administrator. My recommendation is to forward a letter to the administrative group and ask them to forward a name to the superintendent's office. For 2 school board members, that the board would determine this evening when and how it wants to select its membership, either by lottery or appointment. Teachers, we would send a letter to the guild and ask them to forward 3 names to the superintendent's office. Parents, we would send letters to the 4 PTOs and ask them to forward 2 representatives, the names of 2 representatives to the superintendent's office. And for a student, we would forward a letter to the student senate and ask them to forward a name to the superintendent's office. As for community members, the suggestion is to define a community member as a resident who does not have children attending ORCSD schools. We would ask community members to send letters of interest to the superintendent's office and have a student representative at one of our meetings in December draw 2 names in a lottery format, and that would constitute the search committee.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept Superintendent Levesque's suggestions for the selection process for the superintendent search
Screening.
committee. Screening committee. I think it's supposed to be called screening committee.
A second.
Discussion? Yes.
I think this is all right. You know, I have expressed concern that, you know, there may be parents who aren't, for multiple reasons, not be involved in the PTO. One of those reasons could be they work a couple jobs, or they work, you know, strange hours and they're unable to participate. And, you know, I'm afraid that might hurt those types of parents in terms of getting chosen, because they just might be an unknown quantity. But I can live with this, with the exception, in order to make sure we have you know, sort of balanced representation. I think that the board should pick the community members, and I think that will allow us, if we're looking at this and we see that there's, you know, a lot of representation for Durham but less from Lee or Madbury, that's an area where we can actually, you know, be proactive. And it's also a chance for the board to pick someone who has, you know, HR experience or some other type of experience we feel would be useful in the committee. So I don't know, I guess I'll make a motion for an amendment. I'll just see whatever.
This process. My only concern is that, and you may have spoken to this and I didn't catch it as we began our meeting, how will we inform the community, folks who would want to respond as a parent and community members who respond as community members, that this process is underway?
Okay, it would, I would use the communication networks that are available in each community, the electronic communication systems. I would speak with the press so that something would occur in the paper, and I would post it on our website.
So for instance, the parents then would be given the email addresses of all PTO chairs and.
We would actually display the letter for the time commitments and all that type of information would be made. We'd do our best to publicize that information to people in the community,
The channels.
so that it would be wide open.
Okay, yes, Megan.
Just two things, a follow-up to what you're asking, couldn't we just advertise in a similar manner as we did for the forums?
Right, my concern is that for each of these groups, where you respond is different. So
Okay.
for parents, they need a very specific
I see.
response avenue.
Okay.
And what is that? And with
Maybe-
community members,
yeah, I don't know,
it's a little clearer.
PTO or something. I'm trying to think of how we can address Jocelyn's, Cody's concerns and still have this, I think what we're striving for is fairness as much as we can, but we don't want to sacrifice, I guess, some qualifications. So, I don't really have a specific criteria in mind for the community members. I think you just need people who have, are earnest about being thoughtful and can attend these meetings and good judgment. Those are and are good at working with a team. Do we want to outline some basic criteria at all? And then within that pool, whittle it down to maybe a smaller subset and then do the lottery? That's another way we could do it. That's more of a two-stage approach. I'm fine with it as it is, but I'm trying to address.
So do we have a motion for an amendment?
Yes,
there
Is there, and there's a second for that?
Yes,
there is.
Okay.
Motion for an amendment?
No, we haven't
No,
made a.
right, I'll make the
okay.
motion.
Okay,
I
we
mean,
should-
I just-
Okay.
Yeah,
You
I'll
should
do
make
that,
it.
and
So
then we can
I don't
see.
know how strongly you feel that. I'm fine with doing it this way, but I recognize there's this concern about, I just think if you're applying for this, you're probably pretty qualified, I think. It's a big time commitment. I don't know. I'm fine either way. Jocelyn? go ahead.
Yes,
So to
Jocelyn.
move this along, why don't I make an emotion to amend? And then, do you want me to read out my change, and then
Yes.
we'll vote on that? Okay. To amend the proposal for the composition of the search committee, to change committee members, this is not very, to change the process for selecting committee members to board chosen. So, it might not even pass, so.
I'm not going to pass.
All right. You don't have, I don't know if community members to be chosen
Okay.
by the board, is that what I
You
said?
misspoke.
Oh, what did I say?
You said, selecting committee members, you meant community members.
Community members, I'm sorry, to be selected by the board. Thank you.
Do we have a second? Anybody second?
Oh, yes.
Second, okay, discussion again. Yes, Cody.
I think if this is what is, I think the lottery would work out fine. My only concern is that by luck of the draw, you get two people that have completely the same idea. And, that wouldn't be terrible because you have 9 other people in the committee. But still, if you want, I don't know, I think the best way is just to go to the clear sides that we have in the community right now and just take somebody from each side. Or get somebody that's kind of towards the middle more and get 2 people in the middle. But I don't know, never mind.
Good thought. Yes.
Yeah, I think that's something to consider, and I just want to point out that should the board pass this tonight, I would expect that there will be a discussion following, not necessarily this evening, because I don't think people are prepared to have that discussion, but that we would move forward with a discussion at a later point, talking about what we would want to consider in choosing those community members. I don't want to misspeak again, so that we could actually have the criteria developed before we have any names in hand and say, what would make a good committee. We've done this before on the board when we're looking at the composition of a committee. So I think that discussion would have to follow to make sure that we are indeed focusing on how to have the community represented fairly.
Yes, Ann.
Again, I totally appreciate what you're saying. I'm sorry, was it you, Ann?
No, go ahead. You.
Oh, okay,
And
it
Ann.
wasn't,
Right.
thank you. I totally appreciate what you're saying, and I see sides to both, but I think Superintendent Levesque has really thought this out carefully. And like he said, he's talked to Mr. DeBenedictis about this, and I think we need to follow what the experts say on this.
Yes, Ann.
I agree with Jocelyn. I think the responsibility of selecting the community members is the responsibility of an elected board official.
Okay, any further comment? I'd like you to read the motion back.
Certainly. Jocelyn O'Quinn moved to amend the proposal for the composition of the superintendent's planning committee to change community member selection to board chosen, second by Ian Lane.
Okay. No further discussion? All those in favor of the change to the original motion? All those opposed? 3-2. And we have one
What-
abstention.
So it doesn't pass.
Doesn't pass. No, quorum.
Why doesn't it pass?
3-2.
Because a no vote is equivalent to
That'd be a
a no
quorum.
in the House rules.
Am I missing something?
I might be missing something.
I have to abstain because I wasn't here during the motion, so.
Right.
Well, I guess the recommendations, you received the recommendations?
Yeah.
And the issue is whether or not, if we just explain, the issue is whether or not the selection for the community representation would be done on a lottery basis, or whether or not the board as a whole or as a subcommittee would select the two representatives from the community. They would set up the criteria and select them. That's the issue. I've recommended that we invite as many people who are interested from the community to submit their names to the superintendent's office, and that there some sort of a lottery system be used in public session and select the two representatives.
Okay, so do I need to vote in order for the vote to count? Is that what we're down to?
3-2.
No, 3-2 would win because a quorum voted. So I was mistaken.
Okay.
So Jocelyn's amendment passes.
Passes? I don't know,
We have your,
Oh, are we
be
asking
helpful.
Krista to vote?
You could vote.
You want me to vote? Okay. I'm sorry, my brother's house just got broken into and my sister-in-law and the kids are home, so I'm a little, that's why I was late, so. I don't want to vote. I can't think right now.
so,
The
Sorry.
motion passes.
okay.
Jocelyn's motion passes. The rest of the slate as written, we need to vote
Can we
on that. Any further discussion? Yes, Ann?
Can you define the resident who does not have children attending ORCSD schools? Would that be, you mean children, residents, community members, would that just be residents who do not have school-aged children?
Could be. Could be somebody that's homeschooling. Could be a resident that's in the district that doesn't have any kids in the district, prior district students.
Well, I understand it could be community members, meaning people whose children are grown or people who are seniors, but you're saying it could be people who have school-aged children who are not attending our schools.
Could be. Could be adults that don't have any children, but they live in the district. They're voters or they're residents of the district. This list picks up everybody in different categories. And adding this caveat to the community members, it expands the scope of everybody in the community that doesn't belong to these other groups. Okay? You want to read back the original motion?
Yes. Megan Turnbull, excuse me, move to approve the above list for the superintendent screening committee, second by Ian Lane.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor of acceptance of that motion? All those opposed? And all those
Abstaining.
abstaining? Okay.
And I think there's one other item that the board should discuss this evening before it meets with the ABC, and that is to determine how it wants to select or appoint its two members to this search committee. what processes it want to use.
Yes, Ann?
I'd like to make a motion that all board members who are interested and able to serve on the committee put their name in a hat and the superintendent pick two.
Anybody second that motion? We have Megan seconding. Discussion? Yes?
I would not support that because I think this is another way we can help make sure that the committee accurately represents or represents the diverse community that we have. So this is an opportunity where if we need if we want to have preschool represented, and I don't know that we do, I would think this would be a discussion we have when we move forward and talk about the criteria or what types of people would make up a fair committee. We also have people from different towns, and that may come into the conversation, people different aged kids. So, I think that, I believe how we've, as far as I know, have always chosen people to be, on a committee. I think that's the chair and the vice chair and the superintendent discussion. That's how it's been in the past. So I'm not in favor of changing it because I think it's another missed opportunity to balance a committee.
I think I agree with Jocelyn. I think it would be mistaken that we wouldn't vote for who we would like to represent the school board. And pulling them out of a hat wouldn't necessarily be the majority rule. And I feel that we are elected officials and we have to stand up for our votes, stand up and vote for who we'd like to represent on the screening committee. Yes?
If we don't do a lottery system, why don't we do it like we elect chair and vice chair? Instead of having, the chair pick people,
I'm
we
not
could
suggesting
elect people to the committee like we do for chair and vice chair. And then that way, everybody votes and,
Well, I would think that we want people that are willing to serve on the committee and have the time for it.
yeah, you would nominate someone and then it's the same as chair and vice chair. We nominate someone, person accepts, we're not gonna vote on them if they say no, and then we go that way.
You making a motion?
No, we have a
We
motion
have a
on the
motion.
We have a
table.
motion on the table. Any further discussion on any points, including that one? Okay, no further discussion on voting on the motion that's before us. All those in favor of Ann Wright's motion, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, we need to move on to discuss, yes,
Make a motion to have the election of this school board member or members from this, to the superintendent search committee be along the process of a nomination, an acceptance, and then a vote to elect the members.
second by Ann Lane.
Yeah, similar to
Discussion?
chair and vice chair election.
Okay, yes,
I'm just saying, I think that's a good suggestion. Seems to be, make sense.
okay,
So I support it.
yes, Ann.
When we do that meeting, that's run by the superintendent.
That's right.
Say that again?
When we have the vote for the chair and the chair, that's run by the superintendent, not by the current chair.
That's the organizational meeting, but this wouldn't be. But I can tell you now, I would not be on the committee. So,
Well, the only issue with that is who you pick, if whoever's raising their hand, that's the issue, because it's kind
Yes.
of like who's raising their hand first.
Okay.
It gets weird.
yes,
Might I suggest that if we have 3 people,
Let's have a quiz. We get the questions right.
you're gonna pick 2 people who you want to vote for, you're not gonna vote for all 3, so, you know what I mean? Like, if I don't wanna say names, all right, I'll say it, me and Henry. If Henry and I, because I don't wanna do it either. Henry and I and Lee decide that we're gonna be on the superintendent search committee. We'll pretend Lee's a school board member right now. And we all decide in our heads who we're gonna vote for, and the 2 people who get the most votes are on the committee.
okay. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion's before us. All those in favor of Chris's motion, say aye. All those.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, we'll do it that way. Now, we gotta discuss what date we'd like to do it on. Any suggestions?
The date for what?
Just put it on the next meeting.
Go ahead.
Do you want to put on the next meeting with Ken or the next board meeting? I think those are the two options. Because
Next
you probably want to
meeting.
move on tonight.
Next meeting with NESDEC is December 5.
December 5th. You wanna do it on December 5th?
Sure.
So
Okay,
can we
that-
change the agenda in time?
Yeah, we could. Today's the 30th.
Mhm.
We could change it. I would suggest that we do the 7th, because we have a regular meeting. And we're, Monday the 5th is a special meeting. Yes,
Go ahead.
Jocelyn.
I just want to bring up, I don't know if this is what Megan was going to say, what if, I mean, do we want to wait till the end of the process? Because as I mentioned before, this gives us the opportunity to make sure if at that point, and we don't have someone representing Lee, you know, we may want to choose. Or, you know, I think it has to be around the time frame when we're picking the community members, so that we're making sure. And we also, I would prefer that we have the discussion at our next meeting, perhaps on the 7th, about criteria and how we envision the committee. And have that discussion first, then see where we are.
Very
So
good
maybe we
point.
should put that on the agenda
Very
first.
good point. So you're suggesting the 21st, which is the next regular
Is that
meeting
the-
after
Is that the next meeting? Okay.
After
Yeah.
the 7th.
That's
Okay.
the last
I'll
one of
take
the
your
year.
word for
Yeah.
it. Yes, I
Okay.
think, that'd
You
be
wanna
nice.
make that a motion?
Can I make that a motion? Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
Does it need to be?
I don't think, for agenda planning, I don't think we have to.
Oh.
I would just add it to the list for agenda
Okay,
planning.
that's fine.
underneath it.
Yeah, you're right. Okay,
Could I
Yes.
possibly do a quick little thing?
what's that?
So we invited you guys for the 7th, which is next Wednesday, to shadow. It sounds like people are kind of busy that time, so if people want, if you guys want to discuss and find a day that you all can come in, or if you guys just want to come in a couple that day, and then if you want to try and come in the new year or something, when it's easier to schedule, that'd be fine. We're completely open to whenever you guys want to come in and shadow a student if you do.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. And now I'm going to go
So
do some
we'll add
homework.
that to.
Could I have a clarification? Is it December 7th or the 21st for
The
the
21st.
21st
For
election?
deciding board members.
Thank you. Close our meeting and then we
That's
get
it.
into
Oh, we're gonna go back into,
the budget workshop now.
the budget workshop.
Okay.
So do we want to
So
ask
do
the
you want-
budget
yeah,
committee to
would
come
have
up?
the budget.
Yeah, I wanna have the budget committee come up to the mics. Bob?
I don't think you guys want to come up? So, do they have to speak in the microphones? Is this all we have? Do
They
we
should
keep them
speak.
moving around? Do we have one that can move? Do we want to sit someone here?
In the control room, do we have enough microphones?
We don't have a microphone at the podium for our staff. I think our staff, not our staff.
Okay.
And I'm left-handed.
If you don't have a microphone in front of you, we're gonna use this portable mic. Put that in front of you when you do talk, so we catch it on the film. Santa Claus come up to the queue. Staff come up to this mic. Move it over.
No way. Where did he get?
The wire long enough for that stuff. The discussion tonight is with the ABC, and we'll start off by talking about, it's okay with Rob, and this night, excuse me, start off with the high school. We have it listed here as the high school to the first discussion.
Thank you all for giving us the time to make these preliminary recommendations. We met with the high school principals and
Talk to the mic.
Can we move it down?
We met with the high school principals a few weeks ago before Thanksgiving. Can you hear me? And they helped us review the budget line by line, and as a result, we came up with a few recommendations, specific recommendations that we can make at this time. However, it will be another week before we present our final report, and based on our discussions tonight, we may have other recommendations to make. And related to the high school, talking with Todd Allen, and our primary concern has been, as you may be aware, of the small class sizes in some of the classes. And so we came up with the following recommendation. In order to achieve class sizes closer to district guidelines at the high school, the school board should consider a plan to increase tuition students by 100 more students within 2 to 3 years through contractual agreements with local school districts. This will produce up to $1.3 million in revenue versus cutting 5 staff members, which at a cost of or a savings of approximately $500. To achieve the school board recommended guidelines for class sizes at the high school.
That's 500,000.
I did say, didn't I say $500? I
Yeah.
meant 500,000.
Yeah,
I can't even read.
okay. Do we want to discuss that further? Does the board want to ask any questions on that point? Yes,
Well, I think it's been the district's initiative to be exploring options to do exactly this. Maybe not, I don't know whether it's 100 students, but I don't know how many, what is the district, is it Rollinsford, Lee, that we're looking into now? I don't know how many students they have, but I do think that this has been something the district has been looking into. So I support that, and I don't know if there's anything we can do right now to support that, but we're working on it, right? So.
yes.
I like this recommendation because it's proactive and it actually involves getting revenue as opposed to cutting costs. I think that there's something important to point out here. It's not only to achieve class sizes closer to district guidelines, it also would help us to continue to offer a broad range of classes, because as our enrollment goes down, it's harder to offer certain classes and get enough kids in those classes to have the classes, as we've seen. And I think that's really important to us, that we continue to offer a broad range of classes. So I think this would be key. I don't know that we're actively doing this. I think we're passively doing this. When a district contacts us, we're like, put something together. For us to actively go out and woo schools to send their students here, that would involve something else. That would involve a commitment from the administration, and that would involve a process that I'm not exactly clear on. So I guess I'd like to hear from our superintendent if a district wanted to woo students, and I think we could probably identify which local schools tuition to other schools, or which towns tuition to other schools. There's Newington, Rollinsford. How would you go about doing that? And is this something that's difficult? What would we do if we agree that this is what we should do? How do you go about that? And is it easier said than done? Well, everything is.
Well, I guess if you let me respond,
please.
I would just say a process that could be used would be to engage the New Hampshire School Administrative Association to help in that process, as other school systems are presently doing. They have a track record of a meeting with neighboring school systems and putting together financial data and putting a plan that could accommodate that request.
Yes.
And would that cost money?
There would
Talk about
be
budget.
some sort of a contractual agreement that we
Okay.
worked out with them.
Okay, and I would assume that would be a long-term, if we move forward on something like this, is this something that could affect us in September, or are we really talking
I
about?
believe it would, at least you're
following
talking
September?
2 years to 3 years down, because many, the neighboring schools are already in long-term agreements, or, a couple of them are going to be ending, and we're in conversations with them now for 2013.
Okay.
Yes.
I'd have to think about this and find out a whole lot more about it. I don't know really what it would impact as far as sports. 100 students, it's a lot. And when you add 100 students, how that's going to impact our field space and the need to play sports, and also just, you look at Portsmouth, and Portsmouth, certainly there's, when, we look at the schools around it, that like Rye, Newington, very good schools, and then a lot of times they don't want to send their kids to Portsmouth High School because once it gets to the high school, it gets a lot bigger and not, although that's gotten better, but I remember when we moved here, that was not an option. I don't know that we want to be a school where we're going to, we have no control what the elementary and the middle school, what they teach their kids. So we're getting them at the high school level. Is it a good fit? Is it a good blend? I just don't know. So there's a whole lot more that I think we need to, if we're gonna add, that's a significant number of students. And I understand the reasoning behind it. Revenue is great. I'm all for increasing revenue. I just have a lot of questions jumping around in my head about how this would really impact our students and why a lot of people move to Oyster River in the first place. And is it going to change that in a way that may not be a positive way?
Yes, Ann?
I'd like to know if this was based on our current class offerings at the high school, and if the number you used was 22 or some other number.
I believe it was 22.
Yes, and it was 22.
And was it the current class offerings?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
A statement about that. I don't think we can get 100 students come in there by next year. In fact, it'd take like 3 or 4 years. Because most of the parents that would send their children to a different district would want to start in the 9th grade and then continue along. And I think that that was proven when we took in Barrington students to begin with. We were at 48 or 49 students right now, but it's taken 4 or 5 years to get to that point. And I don't think 100 students would instantly start out in the 9th grade. I don't think Barrington sends that many extra students to any other school. They use Dover as their main school, and they use Co-Brown as a secondary school, like Oyster River. And I don't think that I think there's only 89 students that go to Co-Brown at this point, so we wouldn't have an instant 100. And I talked to Leon today, the superintendent today, and asked him about the other districts that we've opened up some discussion with about getting their students in the high school and middle school, and it's going to be a couple of years off because of commitments that they already have. So I think that we need to have something that actually addresses this budget that we're talking about, and not think that we're going to have 100 students. We're way under the guidelines right now, and I think that the guidelines need to be, they were set back in the mid 2000, and I think that they need to be looked at and addressed, because I think that we would have some reduction in staff. And if the sooner that we make that commitment and let it be known, then people that are retiring and stuff like that, maybe we can do it through nutrition. Yes?
Lee, in our current arrangement for tuition students, are they offered the full range of opportunity here from academic through athletic?
Yes.
Yes.
I was going to request that perhaps we can take this issue and put it on our list of budget items to date for school board consideration, but I think really what we should probably do, because I noticed number 4 is consider sustainability committee requests, maybe number 5 should just be consider advisory budget committee requests, or not requests, advice. Because I think there's other things that we've gone through this that we're very interested in that isn't necessarily on this list. So I just want to make sure that at another time we have the ability to go one by one.
Well, I believe
unless we want to go
that
backwards.
Ms. Barrett was going to ask at the end of the report which items that you want
Oh,
to add.
Oh, today.
Yes.
Okay.
So that you'll have that for the 7th meeting.
Can I add one now, or
Yes.
should I wait till the end?
Well, we should wait till the end.
Okay.
Okay, and we'll go around everybody. Next point. Any further discussion on
Yeah, I
that
had
for the
a-
board?
Sorry, I
Yes.
had a quick question about kind of a follow-up to Ann's concern. So if we're talking about bringing in 100 more students, that's assuming we have lost 100 Oyster River students? I mean, or no, right? So there, it will put us at a capacity, I'm trying to get a sense where we
Right,
would
it'll be
be.
an increase of 100 students over what we have now.
Lisa, can you tell them a
Lisa.
little bit how you
Yeah.
came up to that number? Because you went through the whole formula.
Well, what I did was to take the core subject classes, the average for each department for the class size. And I said, what would it take to increase that average class size to, I believe it was 21, because then some could be 20 and some could be 21 and some could be 22, and they'd still fall under the guideline. And I found that one would have to eliminate, in order to save any money and achieve that class size, one would have to eliminate 5 faculty members, 1 in each of the major departments. That would do nothing to help increase the class size in the smaller departments, but nevertheless, in those core classes, to achieve that class size, you would have to decrease the faculty by 5. In order to achieve that same class size by adding students, one would have to add 100 students, which coincidentally is 20 times 5.
Yes, Krista?
Yeah.
Todd, what's the capacity of our high school for students?
800 and, well, the core capacity is like 815.
And do you know what the approximate capacity of students is for the faculty members that we have now?
Well, that depends on what you say is a maximum class size, I suppose.
Okay.
Um,
So it's not
that's
been
very-
calculated from our current class size as to what we have for faculty members?
I'm sorry.
Can't hear you.
It hasn't been calculated for, like, how many staff members we have, or is that what you're
Yes,
talking about?
that's what
Because-
I'm
so
talking
that's-
about. With the current
She's working on
staff,
Okay,
with the current staff, you could add 100 students and no teachers,
okay.
and you would be within the class size guideline of 22,
And what would that bring our total student body up to?
about 780.
So we'd still be within, okay.
Even with the dip that we have going from the 8th grade into the 9th grade this year?
780.
Okay, because we have
So-
680 right now. We're around
Right, so
688.
we'd have to add 100 to that.
Yeah, but the class size that's going from the 8th grade to the 9th grade, when you take out how many kids are gonna go to private school and bring up all the rest of them, I think it's a small class coming up. And it's
It
like
is a small
140.
class, it's a small class going out, though.
Yeah, but I thought the balance between the two was 25 students.
There are fewer yes, that's right, and that would have to be also made up to get to 680, not 780.
Yes, Ann?
Do you see this as a recommendation that would increase student achievement in any way? Or according to the advisory budget committee, what we had for their, I can't find it, I couldn't find it online. What we had for years to put students first before.
That's exactly why we did not want to cut faculty.
This is exactly what Dresden did. The Dresden plan has this spelled out, that they reduced 4 teachers on the same theory that we're talking about. They didn't have enough kids going forward into their high school, and they addressed it. And it's in the plan, it's in the report that they published, and one that we're going along with.
Did you make copies for the board?
No, it's online.
I know, but you've never mentioned.
Wait,
I sent it a couple weeks ago.
What?
I sent it a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
You sent it to the board a couple weeks ago?
I think before our last meeting.
Before Thanksgiving,
And it's also online
A
with Dresden.
special ed thing.
it's posted also.
But they had the same situation, and they addressed it by looking at the core classes, which were understaffed, and they brought them up to 21, I think it was. And they looked at the same area, but I don't think they talked to the issue of bringing in extra students. They looked at what they actually had going from the 8th grade to the 9th grade and looking forward. And they had a guideline that was around what we have at 22, and they addressed it. And they, I think that this guideline should be met, should be tried to be met by our district. It's a guideline that came out of the 2000. It wasn't even this board. It was a past boards that recommended this be the guideline, and they say that 22 it is the high end of a class that we should have at the high school, and they recommend that we go for 20, try for 20, but that's 5 under what the state of New Hampshire is recommending. They recommend 30 with a target of 25 being in the class, each class. So we're even lower than that by 20%. So right now we're at 17, and I don't think it would affect the education of the students. I think that we have mature individuals in the high school, and I think they can handle 2 or 3 extra students per class. Yes.
Just 2 points of clarification. One, I believe that state guidelines are maximum level and not recommended.
Okay.
Okay. And 2, what exactly is the ABC recommending? I need clarification. Are you recommending that there be faculty cuts, or are you specifically recommending that we look more aggressively towards increasing student enrollment? Are you recommending in this year that there be faculty cuts, or are you recommending that we more aggressively look at tuition students? I think that needs to be clearly, I need to hear that clearly.
Well, I think the recommendation is, it has to be either one or the other. And the school board probably is the one that needs
So
to
what is
make
the
the choice.
what is the ABC recommending this year?
Well, we're recommending it over 2 or 3 years. So we're recommending starting the process this year of attracting more students. And we are not specifically addressing whether or not you decide to cut faculty in order to meet the guidelines.
Yes, David.
I think I said that right.
The
You can
recommend-
correct me.
And the recommendation specifically says that we ask you to consider a more aggressive tuition plan.
Yes.
That is our recommendation, and we're saying that we recommend that in lieu of cutting staff to have classes meet the guidelines. I think going back to Ann Wright's question, between those 2 choices, we felt that this is the best for students because it continues to offer greater choice, which will engage students more so that they will get a better education out of it. And it will also, based on our experience, we've had 10 or 15 years ago, we had 4 or 5 different communities that provided tuition students to Oyster River, and it enriched the community and made it a better school. And I don't think that it will harm us. So I think it will improve education if we do that. And it will take a few years to get there, but you've got to be aggressive and start now.
Megan?
I think we need to have a better sense of our likelihood of success by pursuing this tuitioning, and I would like to see us do that. I think it makes the most sense. I agree that it allows for more programs and perhaps new programs to be entered into the district. I think that's only benefits students. I respect Aaron's concern about, the children coming up from other districts may not have had the same education that Oyster River elementary and middle school kids had. But hopefully we can address that, or that's something we can deal with. However, I want to get a better feeling, like if we're aggressive and we start marketing, we're going to be able to do this. I don't have that sense yet, and I don't know how to get that sense until I do some research, so.
It sounds like one way to do that would be to conduct a study. I think that's what we heard that was recommended. So, maybe when we add this to the list, if we choose to add it to the list of budget items, it would be either to use surplus funds to do that, or to put a line item in this budget, which would delay it, delay it till July.
Ann first.
I also empathize with Ann's concern. However, I think based on our differentiated instruction model, that probably shouldn't pose that big of a problem. We're creating individualized plans for all students anyway.
Yes, Megan.
Just lost my train of thought. So we have several issues. We have the declining enrollment that's clearly trending downward for our district and projected to continue that way. And then we have a facility that is not being utilized to full capacity. So I guess there's another way to skin this cat, is to utilize, we could cut staff and then repurpose the building in some fashion to generate revenues or to utilize it, maybe move an SAU office inside the high school. I'm just saying there are other ways to do this. And it kind of overlaps with facility studies and other considerations. Did you look at any of that at all in your analyses? No? Okay. That's all.
Facility studies.
Sorry, we haven't gotten the facilities.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
but maybe you
Yes.
get preview or something.
Yes, Jenna.
I just wanted to say, when we were talking about this, there were also a couple of things that we wanted, I don't think we spelled out here. The current way that the district gets children to tuition in is just kind of this, hey, we're open if you have some parents who are interested. So, we talked about two things. One, you could go and do that show a little bit more aggressively to get some, to talk to parents, go into schools, do a dog and pony show, get people to agree to want to have their children come here and tuition in. But I think that we as a group talked about being more aggressive in terms of there's so many high schools that are looking to not rebuild their facilities. And so to actually engage in contracts with schools. And we don't see that you have to only look at this from the high school perspective. That, if you've got certain school districts that have really strong elementary programs, but all of a sudden, when the kids go to middle school, if people start sending their kids to private school at that point, maybe we should be looking at some of those types of districts where they're starting to send their kids to private school at the middle school level because theirs is not adequate. Those are people you can start at. So the 100 doesn't necessarily have to be exclusive to the high school. And you do want to be mindful of that declining enrollment to keep that number of the declining population up as well.
The district number? It's a district-wide
Correct.
number, not just.
So, right now we have 48, I think, that are tuitioned in right now. We're saying bump it up to another 100. You got 150 tuitioning in. As you start to continue to lose students, you're gonna have to keep that number coming in as well to maintain your staffing levels optimal.
Yes.
The facility study that you referenced will not be a utilization study. So that's another step to determine the full use of our buildings.
Yes.
So this is my concern right now. I think I definitely think we should, we're gonna talk about this further, but the tuitioning in, it needs to be looked at for in my mind, it's crystal clear. I'm concerned though that's a longer range plan and we have to look at the current year's budget. So are you making any suggestions about how we deal with the current proposed budget? Because you're saying just do long range and not address the current.
No, I think that we would definitely encourage the district to do more aggressive solicitation in the way that's currently being done, but bump that up a little bit to attracting parents.
Okay. So what assumption do we use? I mean, what number? We have to put a number in the budget, figure out, how do we know if we're gonna be aggressive enough? You know what I'm saying? How do we come up with that figure? Come on.
I don't have the answer.
Okay.
I think excuse me, I didn't mean to
Go
just
ahead.
jump in here, but I think what you're asking is for us to say, we would like to see you reduce the high school budget by X. And we're not basically saying that. We may be looking at it from a broader perspective, and maybe the high school isn't the only one that should be looking at cutting costs. And the only thing that we identified on here as a way that we can encourage them to cut their printing budget, reduce the printing budget by encouraging more paperless operations, which basically across all the schools in the entire
Right.
district we recommend. And that, we didn't figure out how much that would be in dollars at this time, but it's the only way specifically we could target something that the schools are thinking about doing, and just encourage them to move faster forward. So that would be the only one specifically we've addressed in these recommendations that refers to an actual reduction.
Oh, you've got
Yeah.
sorry.
Oh, excuse me, Rob.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay.
To address Megan's question, in our discussion, I believe it was with the principals, there was mention of 2, maybe 3 districts that are at least in early discussions with the school district about possible tuition arrangements, and that we recommended that the board aggressively work with those districts to try and get tuition students relatively quickly. I believe Rollingsford was, for example, one. If you can make those agreements, you can get tuition students quickly. So that's where your numbers should come from, is what sort of deals are there. We're not privy to those negotiations, but that might give you an estimate of what the numbers are.
Do you have
Yes,
any
well,
additional information?
In terms of tuition students?
Yeah.
I certainly
Yeah.
can.
Would be helpful.
Speak to the mic, please.
Okay. All right.
Well, certainly, I mean, first of all, just as a quick note about current tuitions, we have 48. There are 5 seniors from Barrington who are leaving, 17 in our freshman class. Assuming that same rate, that would mean that's 12 more tuition students right there without having to do anything significantly different. And based upon the number of Barrington kids that have been coming to visit over the last few weeks and touring the school, I'm not concerned at all that we're going to have a drop-off in the number of Barrington students. So I think that's the first thing I would suggest. And 12 students at the current tuition rate, that's $150,000 right there. Yes.
So
What's the population going from the 8th grade to the 9th grade after you take out the kids that would normally go to a private school?
Well, that's 100 and, how many 8th graders you got,
We
Jim?
have 144 8th graders currently.
Okay,
And
144 8th graders.
What's the graduating class at the high school right now?
There's
for this year?
155.
155 now? Okay, 155 seniors.
Right.
And 140, you said 6?
44.
44.
How many are going to private school?
We don't know
We
that
don't
yet.
know, but,
Oh.
I mean,
Anywhere from, we usually 4 to 5, 6, something like that.
I've actually done a report for the board on that. What I did is I looked at trends over the past 4 years, and it ranges anywhere from 5 to 10 students. Last year, we had 10 students go to private schools from ORMS.
Okay.
So again, the average ranges from 5 to 10, so.
How many of those got into Phillips Exeter, Jay?
We had, I think, at least 6, which was a huge amount.
Yeah.
Typically, we have approximately 4 students or 4 slots that go to PEA.
Yeah, and I think, I would just point out that 6 getting into PEA is an exceptional thing, and it should be something we should be proud of. But that's not the kind of thing that happens every year, so the number was higher because we just happen to have a cluster of really strong students getting in. But even assuming a drop-off of, say, 10, that drops the incoming resident population down to 130, I keep forgetting now, 34, thank you, assuming 17 incoming Barrington tuition students, which is just the same number we have of freshmen now. That's 151 versus 155 going out. I'm not a gambling man, but my gut tells me there'll be more than 17 Barrington students. One of the things that is happening is I think kids from Barrington are starting to realize Oyster River is a really viable option. And we're starting to see not second generations, but younger siblings of kids that have come through, and so the numbers are picking up there. And certainly, that's a very simple thing we can do. Just having Susan Miali in the front office, greeting the kids and talking with them, that does an awful lot there. But as far as the other possibilities, I mean, certainly we have been approached by a couple of school districts. It's I don't know how much I can share about that, but they're very seriously interested in the possibility of coming here. One of them is very soon, which would be 2013, I believe Lee was saying. But the other district, it's 2015 or so. But I think it really, how aggressively we talk with them about how much we're willing to make it work, I think would require some guidance from the board. And if the board is very interested in those agreements being pursued, I mean, certainly there are ways that we can look at it in terms of a negotiation that we might consider that we wouldn't have done otherwise. Questions about transportation and things of that we might be able to enter into some other agreements on those things as well.
Megan?
So, I know Jenna mentioned that these 100 students could attend our other schools, but let's just stick with the high school. So we're talking about basically doubling the number of tuition students in 2 to 3 years.
No, 100 would be on top of the 50 we already have.
Right, so
Oh,
it'd be-
100, so
150.
tripling.
Right, it'd be going from the
that's right.
48 we have to
Sorry.
150.
So, I mean, just hearing that, how do you feel about that? I mean, is that something, granted, we
Right.
haven't gotten to the tactics of negotiation about
Right.
what the tuition would be and what types of services would be coupled in, but does that seem like crazy, or does that
Well-
seem feasible?
Well, one of the, I know Lisa, when she did her analysis, one of the things, certainly with the Barrington population, we discovered is that there's a very equitable distribution of kids throughout all the classes, throughout the building. So it isn't like there's a particular class or program that's being overpopulated by tuition students. They're pretty evenly distributed throughout the building. So assuming that same pattern, we felt that there, certainly I could see 50 plus more, meaning getting up over 100 students. I have no question in my mind that we could do it with the current staff we have. I would have less certainty as we get up to the 150 level, but I guess I would also say if it ends up resulting in an expanded program for our resident students, I don't see why that's a bad thing. One of the other recommendations that's going to come up here that hasn't been mentioned yet is the idea of looking at private sources to do athletic field upgrades and so forth. If we've got a revenue stream of $1.3 million a year coming in tuition dollars, not to say we're going to put that all into capital improvements, but it would give us a little more opportunity to ask ourselves, do we want to do something to upgrade our facilities so our resident populations get some benefit from that? Anyway.
Well,
Yes.
my question was sort of more about your confidence level that we did an aggressive, promotion of the district and attractive tuitioning and service coupled in, I don't know, transportation. Do you think we could attract
Absolutely.
that number? Do you
Absolutely.
think the market is ripe for that?
Absolutely.
Okay, I was not clear on that.
Absolutely. In
Okay.
fact, it might be a point of us turning people away as opposed to the other way around.
Todd, have we had this, if we're talking about that level of student population, 740, have we had that population in this facility before?
If you go back, I want to say 2006 that we were at that level.
We had over 800.
And if you go back 10 years, we were actually 817, I think, if you go back 10 years. Not that that was ideal, don't get me wrong, but in terms of the capacity of the building can definitely handle it. The issue is more the classroom sizes, and I would just, to talk about the idea of staff cuts. One of the things that it's important to look at when you look at the numbers, if you look at the average class size in the math department, the science department, and the world language department, you'll notice that all of them are right at that capacity. They really are. They're 20, 21, they're in that ballpark. Where you see the lower numbers is in classes like woodshop. It's in classes that some of the AP classes. And so when you go to do your average, you got to keep in mind that those smaller numbers get averaged in with the larger numbers. When you go to do a staff cut, it isn't as simple as saying, well, we're going to cut 0.2 of an English teacher and 0.4 of a math teacher, because you just can't do that, because you also have to deal with certifications and having highly qualified staff and those kind of things. So I would just caution you, when you start thinking about it in terms of straight averages, you're missing the fact that it's not, averages are great, but you want to stop and look at some of the core classes that we have. And certainly if you look at biology class, if you look at U.S. history, those are classes that most kids take. Algebra 1, they're at the high end of that. They're in the 18, 19, 20, 21, and in the math department, it's many classes in the 20 to 22 range. So.
Lisa, wasn't your analysis only of the core curriculum?
I looked at the core classes, yes.
Yeah, so
English
we didn't average
is
those.
a low one, it will be like 16 and a half or 17. Social studies, the areas where there are a lot of electives, you tend to have lower averages. And unfortunately, classes are already being cut, even though the teachers are here who would have been teaching them, because of insufficient enrollment. And as the population of resident students goes down, it would be unfortunate to have to cancel more choices.
And
I just think if we do get to this conversation where we're thinking of adding that number of students, it should be more of a community discussion we have as well, because that would have a big impact on our schools, not just a board discussion or a board ABC discussion. I would like to bring the community in and hear what they have to say. People moved here for a reason, and I'd like to hear if this is, that meshes with their reasoning for moving here.
my issue is the guidelines. The guidelines were set up under a totally different board. under different circumstances, and I think that the guidelines are lower than New Hampshire guidelines and their recommendations, and we should try to, because we've lost students over the years, we should try to hit that, the guidelines. And I think that in the budget booklet that the superintendent put out, it shows the averages by the class sizes, and I agree that some of them would be hard, but I think that we need to look at the model that Dresden's doing, and the way that they're looking at class sizes and how they are making recommendation to get up to the 21 students. I think we should look at that. We looked at it for the special ed department, and it was valid. And I think it's valid for what I'm talking about, and looking at the guidelines as a reasonable way to save money, and at the same time offer diversity and offer a number of classes for the students that give a broad brush.
I have a question for Lee.
Yes.
I don't know if you can do this, I just don't, I don't have the background in this, but when students, if a student wanted tuition in, do they have to apply to meet certain academic criteria or anything? Is that a standard procedure, or is that not considered?
The present contract that we have, agreement, no.
Okay. Is that something that could be, is that considered
You can do that
common
and be more
practice?
restrictive. That is an option that some do.
Okay.
Co-Brown does
Co-Brown
it.
does that.
Yeah, they have a restriction on that.
But that may limit a community's desire to send its students to you
I
on a
understand.
contractual basis.
Okay.
So you've got to define who you are, what kind of relationship you want with what community, where's
Right.
the best fit, and you have to understand that there's a variety of students and variety of population.
Yes, Megan.
There's this one little disconnect. When the ABC is saying, okay, we could try to bring in 100 additional tuition students or cut 5 staff, right? And then Todd just said if we went up to 150 students, he didn't think the current staff level could support that. Or did I misunderstood?
What I said was, I wouldn't make that promise at this point.
Okay.
It would have to be looked at as those students start to come.
Right.
It may be possible.
Okay.
But it gets hard to predict that depending on the distribution.
Because that's
of kids.
where what you're recommending may not actually produce that result in terms of, you may actually have to add staff depending on the types of students coming in or what the
I think that one of the points we were making also is you bring a lot more revenue. And the
Yeah.
revenue side increases by a dramatic amount, and that even cutting of 5 staff saves less than half of that. So, it was weighing the options.
Okay.
I know it may get to a point, we don't know. It will affect staff too.
Ian, go ahead.
Just a second, I know there's also, I mentioned athletic fields, but there's also the cafeteria too, which I know has long lines and there isn't a lot of space there too. So when you add a lot of kids there, there's a,
We've had a number of kids in the school already.
pardon?
We've had a higher number of high school students in this class, in the school. So the cafeteria, they're probably overstaffed right now because she's looking at ways to bring in more students to use the cafeteria.
Well, I've heard that there's long
She's
waits.
addressing that through the cashiers.
Right, so if you add more students, it's just longer waits for food.
Yes.
In the past, when we had more students, we just had more lunch waves. Actually, the number we have doesn't warrant doing that. It actually, having more kids might actually cause us to have more lunches and then actually speed it up because there would be fewer kids at each lunch, possibly. But right now, it's just not warranted. But we could easily change our schedule and have 3 lunch shifts, and that we could accommodate that.
Yep. Yes, David. I'd like to try to wrap up this, and because we're going to make recommendations. at the end.
I would just address the point of the students who would choose to come here. I think it's important to remember that most likely the students would be self-selected, such as they are from Barrington. Barrington pays, I think it's $8,000 or $9,000, which is the Dover rate, and then the parents have to pay the extra few $1,000s. So that basically make sure that that's a serious decision, that family's willing to commit, that the kid's willing to commit to the Oyster River curriculum and take it seriously. So that tends to self-select more academically focused kids.
Special ed students, from the Barrington, only like 5 students, I think, that have IEPs, according to your figures in the book.
5 is the maximum, I don't think it's more than
Yeah,
that.
so we're not talking a lot of students that need IEPs.
Well, students with IEPs are welcome to be a part of that process, and then what would happen is that any services that are special ed related that go above and beyond regular education, then those are charged to the sending district.
Right. Okay, well, moving on, next recommendation?
The next recommendation.
Let me
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me tell you about the process.
Sorry.
At the end of today's meeting, we're gonna have a list that is already started, that the board is keeping to make decisions on. We're gonna go around the table at the end and make suggestions to look at heavily. And so your recommendations now are being listened to by the board, and some will be put on our list. Some might not be. Okay, yes.
Thank you.
So, I just want to raise that point about those other recommendations coming to the board that the ABC haven't had a chance to look at. We did discuss that on Monday. We did discuss on Monday that other fiscally impactful recommendations that are coming to the board from other committees, the ABC hasn't had an opportunity to advise you on those fiscally impactful
Right.
recommendations. So that's
We
just
don't
a
have to make a final
consideration.
decision until around the 21st, or the meeting on the 21st. So we're gonna add to the list tonight, and then we'll make a final decision on the 21st. I believe that's this.
Great.
Well, I mean, you can do that. You have till the 21st, absolute deadline. You can add additional meetings. You can meet all the way through December if you wish. But December 7th was a time, we've been at this since October 4. December 7th is a time where we have to have some definitive action, particularly if you want the administrative team to go back and look at this. You can't wait till December 21.
Okay.
Okay? And so, we have all reviewed the minutes of the ABC, the last committee meeting. I don't know if there are any recommendations coming beyond that meeting, but looking at those minutes, I did not see any significant difference to what the recommendations are here. So I guess I'd like to know further what fiscal recommendations are coming that have not been on the minutes.
At our meeting on Monday we did discuss a few recommendations that actually weren't voted on by the ABC. Not all ABC members were there. They may be reissued, brought back onto the table, but
So are they coming back as recommendations of the ABC or just ideas or discussion items?
they are recommendations from the ABC that will be included in our final report.
You're gonna meet on the 5th.
There are many broad, overarching, if you read the minutes.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so it's all in the minutes then?
Right.
Okay, fine, I'm all set. There's nothing, okay.
Nothing
Fine.
new.
There's nothing other than what's in the minutes. And and the board has those. They're all posted. Okay, thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next recommendation.
The next recommendation had to do with the athletic fields that have been, or the facilities that have been of interest to the high school principal and the athletic director. And the only thing, basically, this recommendation is just the school should be open to discussing a plan that would, if they do get presented with such a plan, but considering private funding as a primary source for such additions. And also, in addition to that, focus on any of these athletic facilities that we currently pay for and build capacity on areas that we can use for revenue. Use them as a revenue source, as we're looking more at the revenue side for other team use or championship games.
Okay. Yes, Megan.
Did you look at other facility rental options? For example, we have this, auditorium that could be utilized for different performing arts and generate revenues for the district.
We have addressed that, go ahead.
Yeah, and it was our understanding that Randy was going to come back to the board with a proposal and that you guys were supposed to talk about your policy related to facility use, so we haven't looked any deeper because that was what we were told was gonna happen.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could just
ahead.
add a little bit on that. Many of the organizations who request to use those facilities are nonprofits and have limited income to support. We do not have many of a profit nature, and when they do, we're happy to have them and they can pay the full boat. But they're not large numbers.
Yes, Ann first.
I would like us to consider if this gets back to the tuition students, that we consider athletic user fees. It's not unusual to do that, and that if they're going to participate in a sport, that would be another way of generating revenues. If they choose to participate in a sport, that there's a fee associated with that.
You're suggesting we charge the tuition students?
A user fee for a sport activity.
All students or just
No,
tuition?
tuition students.
Oh.
Okay. Yes, Megan?
With reference to your comment, Lee, I think it's still valuable if we have idle facility that, fixed cost, even if it's a nonprofit organization. I think there's ancillary benefits to the community too. I mean, the people will come in, they'll be here, they'll go to restaurants. There's other benefits that surpass perhaps, I think it could help overall.
Well, we do work in a very cooperative way with such agencies. I was just responding that it's not a
Yeah.
money stream as one would expect. That's all I
Right.
was clarifying.
Okay, all right.
Okay, next.
And the final recommendation on the list, are you ready to go on to that?
Yes.
And as mentioned a little earlier, there has been a intent or a hope on the part of the schools, as we heard it when we were talking to them, to maybe perhaps go paperless as much as possible. And so the 25% reduction in the printing budget at each school would help us perhaps encourage the schools to go paperless.
Krista?
I would be in support of this if we change the recommendation to be a reduction of printing budget by 25% district-wide, rather than 25% at each school. I mean, I don't fully admit that I'm not a parent of high school or middle students, so I don't know what it's like paper-wise. But I do have a couple elementary school students, and this recommendation came out, and then the next day I was emptying out their backpacks after, Thanksgiving vacation, which I'm sure the teachers got all organized and then a boatload of papers. But as I was looking through the papers that were coming home, I know last year and the year before especially, I remember seeing notices from the PTO and some other printed materials that I don't see those anymore. Those normally come electronically, but the paper that's coming home with my children, and this is just my children, so I don't know if this is elementary school wide, but is like writing papers and stuff that elementary school students are learning how to write. They can't do that necessarily on a computer. So, or at least I can't see that on a computer. They can do it, but I don't know that they're doing it, and I don't know what that looks like. So for me, some of that paper is necessary for the elementary school students, at least, because they're learning how to write. And in order for them to learn how to write on a piece of paper, they have to write on a piece of paper. So I want my kids to be technology savvy. I still want them to be able to write a note to me. So I think that if we make the recommendation 25% district-wide, we could pick up some of the paper waste that we're using at elementary school and other levels to make it a district-wide mandate. But I just wanted to put it out there that I believe that some of the paper usage that we have at the elementary school levels especially is needed.
Megan?
How much are we talking about? I mean, how much money is that? I'm trying to find it. For the high school?
The printing budgets are increasing though.
No, is it, I'm trying to find it right now. I thought maybe you knew, because you're.
I don't know, but
You memorized
Krista,
the
to your
budget.
point, it was never the intention that any required paper would be cut. So we're using the
Right.
term paperless very loosely. Classes that can move to submitting their papers online, that was one of the things that we talked about. all those forms that we get at the beginning of school. PTOs have been shifting to going paperless, so those budgets should be going down accordingly. But we saw a trend up in all the printing stuff.
Yep.
When you're trending up with your technology too, we feel like that should be balancing that down. So obviously we'd never sell it volume for schools. We need to go for it.
Yeah.
I mean, is it a large line item?
It is.
I mean, I'm just trying to decide if it's worth talking about.
Right.
I mean, is it worth talking about? Are we talking like a few thousand? Are we talking
I think it would be
30,000?
helpful to
is
ask
worth
the principals if
It'd
that
be like
was, if it's unreasonable or not.
Probably $4,000 or $5,000.
Yeah, I mean, is it reasonable that we
Not enough.
said 25% or is it totally unreasonable?
I think it's reasonable to set the objective to
Right.
reduce paper usage. 25% feels like picking something out of the air.
And then that was kind of
But I
arbitrary.
think it's an admirable goal.
Yeah.
But it also says something about technology and what we should be spending on technology at the same time.
Right, and we're seeing, you know, we see the value of increasing the technology, but we're seeing that the copiers and the paper and the printing and all of those costs continue to increase, so we'd like to see some of that balance with the increase in technology. That was kind of the objective of that.
Certainly, if you look at where the largest volume of paper at the high school and probably the middle school ever comes from is teachers publishing supplemental readings for kids to do that could be done in some other format. Kids printing multi-page reports that get handed in and graded and given back to which teachers are slowly moving more towards the online formats to do that. So a lot of that stuff is happening naturally, and you know, I wouldn't hazard a guess at this point whether 25% can be done right now, but it's certainly feasible. I the idea of paperless is certainly a worthy goal.
I think 25% as a target is perfectly reasonable, but as a target.
Right, it was
Yeah.
just kind of arbitrary.
Sure.
I think it should just be a target. It's a goal. It's not-
Yes.
I could also throw one other point in that, if the target is to reduce the volume of paper used, that's one way to go, but the other piece is we use a lot of recycled paper, which actually costs more.
I
We
think
could
it's less
actually-
about paper than it is about printing. You know, the ink is
The
really
ink
probably
costs.
you know, when I get, you know,
Yeah.
stuff home on, you know, that's color ink and it's not it's not double-sided, you know, that's the kind of stuff where we think are very simple things that can be done.
Okay.
It's not a lot of money.
Middle school recommendations.
Well, it starts at the top with the same recommendation for the middle school. And then so I don't know that we need to discuss that further, do we?
No.
The concept of the technology integrator was proposed when we were at the workshop in early October, when Jay was presenting his area of the budget. And we are not recommending hiring a technology integrator at this time. We feel that the technology mentors and other means of assisting the staff who is getting more tech savvy may not be necessary to hire a full-time person.
Okay. Next one. Any discussion on that? Yes.
I think one thought that came to my mind about that was that technology should be a more and more important consideration when doing hiring. That is, if a person's background is more technology, then they should be more likely to be hired. That may mean going for younger people, people who have a natural bent to technology or whatever. But emphasizing technology capabilities should reduce the need for in-house technology training or assistance.
Danielle, do you want to speak to that issue? To the board?
I think we've spoken to it, I mean,
Can you come up to the mic? I'm sorry.
It's something that we've looked, we would like at our school committee, but very candid, I told my staff 2 months ago this wasn't going to happen, so that's what I expected. So we're good with the recommendation at the middle school that we not hire that for this year. It's really that kind of simple.
Well, what about the broader issue that Tom brought up, about the fact that we should hire computer
Yeah, I mean, when
savvy
we
people?
hire 21st century teachers, just like for our 21st century learners, technology skills is definitely a skill set that I target in my hiring. I've done that since I've been principal, and will continue to do that, for sure.
Very good. Yes, Megan?
Was that position in the budget or not?
No, that was
I
an
couldn't
ad.
remember
That's
if it
not
was an
a
add-on.
decrease.
Okay.
That was just a recommendation of
Okay.
mine, so.
Okay, so it was a
Thank you.
recommendation.
Yep.
to be added.
Next one?
The next one really is something that is not in the current budget, but it's a CIP item, and we were very aware that there is a facility study coming out, and it may include some itemized recommendations of priority items. We don't know, so we felt strongly enough that the second phase of the middle school bathroom renovation should be in whatever is considered by the school board to put in the CIP.
Okay.
And it's not in the budget now.
So you're gonna make a recommendation that, for the CIP, that you're gonna make a recommendation to put it into a CIP
That's what we're saying.
warrant article? Okay. Yes.
And I think the recommendation related to CIP is going to be similar to last year's, and I think we were a little disappointed with this year's budget to see that the overall CIP number was still about half of what we think is necessary as a baseline CIP infrastructure funding level of about $1 a square foot. So we made the recommendation last year, and we're gonna make the recommendation again this year, that the minimum amount of money that should be invested, once we get the facility study, it's gonna tell us what we need and when. We feel like that has to be prioritized, but then there has to be a certain amount of money that we dedicate. So we would like to see at a baseline, $400,000 a year going into our capital improvements so that we don't continue to fall behind in these areas.
Will that be in the final report?
Yes.
Yes.
It was already on one
It
of the
was in
recommendation
previous, yeah.
reports, number one, I think.
Is that based on a percentage?
We did it at $1 a square foot. It's
$1 a square foot, which
Again,
is
it's
fundamentally a low figure for
fairly
maintaining facilities.
arbitrary. And that money, that may need, once we get the facilities report, it may just need to be higher, but we feel that, you know, that at a minimum, you need to start there, and not at this 250 number that we've been using for a couple of years.
David, and then Megan.
I'd also like to add a little characterization to the middle school bathroom recommendation. Our fear on the committee is that the facilities committee, the facility study is not going to come in time to really, provide a lot of input into this budget. And our CIP recommendation is already low, so that in case that facility study does come in late, we're recommending that you at least consider the high school bathroom, because those, we've got, I think, 3 or 4 phases. Middle school bathroom. There are 3 or 4 phases that we've already outlined. It's a clear need. We did 1 phase last year, and that would sort of help give us some balance if the facility study doesn't come in with alternative recommendations within the time frame that you need.
Megan?
That's all right.
Okay.
You refer to the CIP as low. Are you referring to the 250, or is there some new CIP number outside of the 400 that none of us know about?
No, the 250 recommendation that's in the budget now, based on what Jenna just said, the ABC thought that was a low figure. And it was low compared to last year. And we thought that was at 883?
It's only 139 that appears right
Okay,
now for the 2
139.
items in the
Right.
budget.
So, I'm sorry, 139.
It's 139 for the entire district.
Right,
Yeah,
for the 100,
right now
right.
is all, right now, it's in this budget.
So that's low, so we're thinking this is a project that can be sort of in the pipeline, shovel ready, that could be stuck in case the facility study doesn't come in time.
Leon, was that was intentional on your part because the facility study had not?
I guess it was twofold. One is that we reviewed the Mohammed situation, and we felt it was a life safety issue to have that building sprinkled, so we put it in the budget. We didn't put it, it was my recommendation not to put it in the warrant, because I felt it had to be done for the safety of children. And the other items, we were waiting for the facilities committee. I did not put it in the budget, and warrant articles normally originate from the board anyway. So that's what December 7 and December 21 are about, is if you want to, those CIP items are not normally included in the budget, but I included one because I felt it was a life safety issue. I didn't I didn't think it was up for chance.
So should our increase of that to 400 be a CIP, as identified as a CIP being a buffer, so to speak?
Well, this-
Or should there be a line item in the budget?
I guess
that we-
what I'm hearing tonight, I guess I'm a little confused. I heard it should be a CIP request, like a warrant article every year. That's what I heard. But, so if you're going to build it into the budget, then you have to increase the budget.
Yes.
I think one of the reasons we're highlighting this, and I don't think we're either way on necessarily the warrant article, is that you did include those Merrimack, I think there's a Masterway piece in there as well for 139,000. That's inside the budget, but it's being compared. That 139 is being compared to the 270 plus that we spent last year. So that 270 is in the last budget. So when we look at this bottom line number and we see it's a fairly small increase over last year's, but the one we're comparing to includes all the CIP items we did last year. So to compare apples to apples, we would say put the middle school in this budget so you can see it, and then if you want to pick it up and move part or all of that CIP into a warrant article, go ahead.
Any other discussion about that?
I guess I would ask Leon, what is your recommendation?
Well, I guess my recommendation is to be included in the budget is stated as it is. I felt that the Meharmet one was a life safety issue. It was not something that I guess I was prepared to not recommend. As far as the bathrooms, I mean, I haven't seen the facilities report. I have the capacity to prioritize, so that's why I didn't do it. And I guess I would have to rely upon Sue to probably state what is phase 2 of the bathrooms of the middle school. Sue Caswell, do you have a number for the what it would cost for phase 2 at the middle school for the bathrooms? What was it last year? Do you know the?
What we did last year, the bathroom renovations were actually in the CIP, so the voters were allowed to actually vote on that, as well as the office renovation that we did last year. And what we discussed the previous year, I don't even think Sue was on board. I know you weren't, Lee, but the plan was to do at least or renovate at least one bathroom per year. One of the big reasons for that was try to save on water costs. A lot of the
Yeah, my question is, what's the cost for the renovation of a bathroom?
it was going to be about, I think, approximately $120,000 per year.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing is that should be added in the warrant article. You have two choices: to add that as a warrant article, or to take the situation that I done for Mohammed, the $100,000 for the sprinkler system, to take that out, put that in the warrant article as well. I just felt that needed to be in because it was a life safety issue.
And I don't
I
think
have
that
no issue
we,
with
as a
that.
committee, cared if it was a warrant article or a budget, added to the budget, but as Rob said, comparing apples to apples, the
So-
other CIP items are in the budget.
Yeah, so that is an item that the board can consider and add in that 129,000, was it 129?
120.
20 or so, and I'm sure Sue will prepare the accurate numbers for that.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
I think it absolutely makes sense to keep the sprinklers in the regular budget because they are a safety issue and we don't want to risk losing that. I think we can wait and discuss. We'll put that, the bathrooms on our list. It already is on the ABC's list, and move on.
Okay.
Eventually come up with our.
Yes, Tom.
I'd like to make a clarification. It's not that the Mohammed does not have sprinklers. The building is fully sprinklered. The point is to add a pump which will automatically turn on should the sprinklers be asked to activate.
Yeah. Right now, there's no water in the system.
There's
I
water.
misspoke, but
Yeah,
it's a
there's water.
safety issue.
Okay,
There's a tank.
just takes a pump.
But it doesn't.
It's completed.
Doesn't work.
Yeah,
It doesn't work without water.
yeah. Okay, moving on. Wait, Tom? Yes.
I want to hazard a comparison. I believe that in one or more years prior, the CIP was as high as $700,000 or perhaps more. So when we're looking at how much do we need to spend, having a $700,000 peak suggests that things weren't done early enough and it wasn't spread out across years as you might expect to have a well-planned CIP process.
Yes.
I agree with Tom. I think that's something that we definitely need to keep in mind. However, I think that there's a balance that we're playing with, in that we're trying to have a CIP number that is large enough to support the structures that we have, but low enough that the voters will approve it. So, you know, we're walking a fine line and choosing a number that we think, we're choosing items that need to be done and that the voters will see value in, and that are willing to accept. So it's kind of a balance game.
Yes.
I've always tried to understand the point of the CIP. You know, why not just, if we recommend that the district does this and we think it should be part of the budget, just put it in the budget. And, I mean, I don't know, I think we have to get to a point in time where we are budgeting for improvements. I mean, we can't just say, oh, it's a crisis now, this bathroom is 100 years old and, you know, kids don't want to use it. I mean, I don't want to, I would like to kind of get ahead of the curve and be a little bit, you know, budgeting for these types of things. This is going to be constantly going on. So it's never going to end, as long as we have facilities, unless we all are virtually learning from home. So that's my point.
Okay. Next, the elementary schools.
The elementary schools, both principals gave their presentations to us, and one of the, when we were talking with Chris Gallo at the Massway schools, we were looking at the first grade teaching position being suggested, being that be removed from next year's budget. Or it is right now, not in next year's budget. And we're very aware that on December 21st, there will be a report coming out from the Long Range Planning Committee with final figures. And it's kind of a soft recommendation in one sense, that we're just asking the school to reassess after they see those figures, whether or not that they should be eliminating the first grade teacher, or whether the remaining students can be spread around to the other remaining teachers, or what would be the best approach. So we're just asking the school board to take another look at that.
Lisa, will the Long Range Planning Committee, will they have an answer to that question?
We will have a projection for the number of first graders next year at Massway.
And the reason for the reduction of teachers, because the kindergarten this year has one class too low, 20 students or thereabouts, didn't show up.
There are only 41 kindergartners at Massway.
As opposed to 65 or something of that nature usually. Okay. Yes, Ann.
Chris, how did you get your number for first graders next year? Obviously, you did not decide to lay off a first grade teacher lightly, so.
Yeah, just looking at our past history of kindergartners going to first grade, the most we ever had add on to that class was about 10 to a dozen. But Lisa's been talking to me about the fact that the Long Range Planning Committee is pretty convinced that it looks like first grade could be around 73 students next year, which would warrant 4 teachers in that grade level, not 3.
So there's some kind of hidden group that's not.
I don't know.
More.
I don't know.
Our projections are based on births, and although birth rates have been declining, we don't do a grade progression ratio between kindergarten and first, because many families, for whatever reason, choose to send their children to private kindergartens, full-day kindergartens, whatever. So there could be an influx. We've determined, and we've tried both ways every year when we test the model. That has been one of the things we considered. And we've found that births 6 to 7 years ago, average, are a better predictor of first grade enrollment than kindergarten enrollment the prior year.
This year with the drop in kindergarten, we have one extra teacher on the budget. And half a teacher, okay. And we're utilizing her throughout the system.
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's also important to know that I think the figure in the recommendation is a little high if the teacher is put back in the budget. It was estimated by the ABC around 80,000. It's more in the 60,000s because it's a first-year teacher.
Including benefits?
Yes.
Yes.
I wanted to get a sense, actually, from Dennis and Chris about the tuitioning in idea for elementary. Have you thought about it? Do you have thoughts on that? Is that something that could help, maybe at Massway, you know, with the declining enrollment that we're seeing?
Well, I think for Mohammed, that's a pretty bad idea.
Yeah, well, I know. I mean, I'm trying to give you both
So
a chance to talk about it.
I mean, that's something that we can talk about. It's not a discussion we've
So,
had.
do you think, okay.
To add to that
I don't
discussion,
know.
Megan.
We have 4 or 5 inquiries about that every week.
May I ask a-
From people from Dover, from people nearby communities. And
Okay.
years ago, we used to tuition, accept a limited number of tuition students.
Okay. I understand Mohamed's over capacity. Both my children go there. I do have another follow-up question.
Well, to help answer your
Okay.
question, I think that most of the districts have elementary schools that they fill up. It's high schools that they don't.
But, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
There are requests. There have been requests that have come in
Yeah.
over the years.
Are those requests come from individuals or they come from school districts?
Individuals.
Individuals.
And so they would, for example, years ago, my grandson lived in Somersville, and I was able to tuition him in to kindergarten because I wanted him to come to school with me, and it was a great year, and that helped everyone, helped my wife and I and the district and all of that business. But when the enrollments increased, we had to stop that practice.
Yes, Megan?
My other question is, do we allow staff who live outside our district we don't allow them to send their kids?
We used
No.
to.
Used to. It was in their contract, but it isn't anymore. I think we had one student this year that's grandfathered because she'd been in the system for a long time, and then she's graduating this year, I guess, something pretty close to it. Yes, Krista?
Is it okay to talk about the next recommendation with this one since they're a little related? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so do you want to explain it first and then I have a question about it, or?
The issue of the flexible district line was trying to see if there was a way to, because of moving where buses go and where they pick up kids and where there's more come from one neighborhood, like there's a greater enrollment from one neighborhood or another, whether that could be considered for balancing the population of the 2 elementary schools.
Okay, so with that said, and I know I've mentioned this 2 years in a row, and it's not very popular, and yes, my kids go to Massway. It's perplexing to me to hear the conversation saying Massway's at capacity, Mohamed's at capacity, and Massway has plenty of space. That bothers me. We have 2 schools. They're both equally good. We have a great community. You know, there's no difference between the education at Massway and the education at Mohammed. And I don't see why we should have 1 elementary school at capacity and 1 elementary school with a ton of space. So I'm throwing it out there again. I think that perhaps it's not changing the lines. Perhaps it's making Massway, and I'm just pulling numbers out of my
Head.
Making Massway K through 2 and Mohammed 3 and 4, and then you have the flexibility of moving teachers however you need to move teachers, and keeping kids within the same level, all in the same building, and then there's no, my kids belong at Mohammed versus Massway. I don't know what the answer is, but I think it's definitely a discussion that we have to have, because if we continue to see space arising at Massway and an overcrowding situation at Mohammed, nobody's getting a good education. So that's a problem.
Yeah, I think Dennis has addressed this when he had the meeting.
Yeah, I really think that that's an issue that needs a serious look. If you just take the fact that Mohammed has, and the district and the taxpayers are paying for 2 modulars at Mohammed and have been for 15 years, and if there is space to accommodate the population of both schools in 2 schools, it makes absolutely no sense to be housing 2 classrooms in modular classrooms, and we can use the analogy of using the middle school toilets to put our money in.
Nice.
Yes.
And this model is not unusual. There are other districts that have kindergarten through 3rd or 2nd, and then we could potentially bring our 5th grade back into an elementary setting, which is also a consideration.
Yeah, but I think drawing the lines of who goes to Massway and who goes to Mohammed would be just as easy, because we wouldn't have to worry about busing to the same home. We would have other issues that are cost factors. And I think that you're right, there is too many students at Mohammed, and there is the space available at Massway. But I think it's more moving the line a little bit.
Yeah, but you're
And
gonna have a
it might
whole-
not take all year, 1 year to do it, because you have some 4th graders that, or 3rd graders that you'd want to keep in the same school. But, so there might be a busing issue for a couple of years.
Yeah, we have this issue, I don't know how many years ago, 10, 15 years ago, when Massway was overcrowded and Mohammed wasn't. And we had to move some neighborhoods, and we did it by not forcing people to move, but by changing the neighborhood and grandfathering the people in a certain neighborhood. And then when new children came, they came to Mohammed. And it kept everyone happy, and it was a gradual change, and it was fine.
Yes, Jocelyn?
I don't want to get off track here. I think we are. But, you know, isn't this something that a strategic plan would address? Isn't this something that perhaps the new superintendent can work with the staff to address? I mean, we're not gonna resolve it tonight. So maybe we can just move this off the table.
Can I just make one comment? I've been waiting for a little while.
Yes.
My neighbor, I live downtown, and my neighbors, their children actually went to Massway. And it used to be that there were certain neighborhoods right downtown that both buses go by, that there would allow some flexibility. So the recommendation is actually calling for flexible district lines, and I just wanted to explain that. Because that's what we're talking about, that there used to be this option for choice in certain neighborhoods because both buses go by those neighborhoods. So faculty, downtown, and a couple of areas around UNH. So that's what the recommendation was. I just want to make sure that everybody, because it didn't seem to go that direction.
Okay.
That's what they used to do. So it wasn't
It
my
used to be
idea,
that
that's what
way
they
in
used to do.
Woodridge.
Megan?
It's not my brilliant plan.
I had a question. I do think that it makes a lot of sense. That, you know, Chris was saying, I agree wholeheartedly. I also agree with Jocelyn. We don't want to get too off track. But I wanted to ask about full-day kindergarten. And I think there's a large number, I'm not trying to open a can of worms, but, you know, do we want to give people the option to pay to have full-day kindergarten, and maybe we offer it at Massway? There's a capacity there potentially. Is that something that was considered?
Well, we actually sent something to the board.
No,
I
we
think-
didn't
Did it go to the board? I don't think
No,
so.
no,
Just
we
went
didn't
with
already
ABC.
discuss it.
Forget it. We might have that recommendation for you.
Okay.
Do you want to even mention the article?
It was just an
It's a-
article.
Explain it to the board if they didn't hear it.
Bedford,
Yeah, Bedford is doing a program,
they
Just
piloted
like
a
that.
revenue fund.
and they're actually making money on it.
Yeah, well, let's
The-
look at that.
The
Okay.
revenue exceeds.
Ann?
I lived in Lenox, Massachusetts, and we had all-day kindergarten, and it was choice. So you either went half-day and didn't pay for it, or you went full-day and you paid, at that time, it was quite a while ago, it was about $600 a year to get your child into the building for the whole day. Again, it's not a new model. It happens, it's done. It's a heck of a lot cheaper than paying for daycare for some folks. But the other thought I had is and you've even brought this up, Lee, I believe, Have you looked at the possibility of increasing our preschool programming at the high school if space permits?
So that was one of our
Which would be also be a revenue stream.
Yeah, another report, I think, had that as a recommendation, right?
No,
Yeah.
the preschool.
When we
Is
talked,
it the
when we did
special
SPED,
ed?
so that was recommendation number 2. Under the SPED program, that was one of our recommendations.
So, but I'm not
But
talking
that,
about.
she's not talking about special ed. You're talking
Just
about, no.
straight
No,
students.
because when we talked about SPED, so PEP falls under the SPED program,
Right.
one of our recommendations was to, if space permitted at the high school, add in another class
Oh.
of PEP, to bring in more, because there's a waiting list a mile long. It's nearly impossible to get in PEP these days. So, not only would you be accommodating parents, allowing people to pay into the program, but you'd actually, one of the problems that we talked about related to special ed is parents not identifying the needs of their children early enough. So one of the issues we have when kids get to kindergarten is that they're identified, it could have been identified 2 years earlier. So it's a win-win-win.
Yes, Megan.
I have a question about what we charge for the typical kids to go to the PEP program. Is that, how much leeway do we have with that?
Well, there's a whole issue related to PEP because of the way the contract is built right now. We get 0 revenue from the program. So you're gonna have to look at that entire contracting process.
Which one is that?
Phyllis wants to talk.
Yeah, Phyllis,
I just wanted to explain.
come up to the mic.
The current, I won't even have to bend down. The current program is, the preschool program is run by Stratford Learning Center, and we contract Stratford Learning Center. So any tuition that we get for students who are not identified, and they attend the program, all that tuition goes to Stratford Learning, and it goes into a discretionary fund that's used for things like last year was the playground. And so it goes into Oyster River capital improvements, whether it's technology or, playground equipment. But again, that is not a revenue source for Oyster River the way it currently is structured. So
Could it be restructured?
I don't know. I mean, anything can always be done. But Stratford Learning Center runs the whole program right now, and all the, child find, all the different therapists who are employed, that is all serviced through Oyster River. So if you have some low incidence kind of need, like a vision specialist or something like that, that is all provided through Stratford Learning Center. So
Theoretically, if you added students, though, you could maybe lower your cost with them to a certain degree, potentially. You're bringing more revenue.
you're also restricted because it's primarily it's a special ed preschool
Right.
program. So we do have children who are not identified who are there, but there's a balance that, is confined by, regulations by the state.
Okay.
So it's not a free-for-all in terms of how many children who
I
are
see.
not identified who can attend. So
So,
in the current structure, that's, as a revenue source, it's non-existent. It can build into a capital improvement, a discretionary fund through Stratford Learning. But with the current structure, that would not be a source of revenue with the way it's
Okay.
designed right now.
Phyllis, do we charge any students that are unidentified a fee to go to that program?
There is a tuition, I just don't have it right now. Did I put the amount? Yeah, and so it's in the budget. It's $60 a month for the 3-year-olds that attend 2 mornings a week, and then $120 for 4-year-olds.
And that money is what goes in the discretionary fund that's a capital
That's
improvement fund.
right. So none
But
of
it's
that
controlled by Stratford Learning
Yeah.
Center.
Stratford Learning Center, and all of those funds and the disbursement of those funds, I'm on the Stratford Learning Board, and so it's not like anything is decided unilaterally by Stratford Learning. It's always looking at needs and everything is addressed, but again, as a revenue source, the way it's structured right now, that wouldn't be a feasible option.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next.
Moving right along. The next recommendation was when we were discussing whether or not we supported the idea of a math coach, full-time position. And the ABC feels that it does not support a permanent, full-time equivalent FTE math coach position, and that other models for improving math instruction should be explored.
Any discussion about this? Yes, Ann?
We've had the math coach for 2 years? Okay. And has, Chris Dennis, you can answer this. I'm just wondering how this has affected, how you feel that this has affected the student achievement in math at the elementary level. Do you feel it has happened?
I think it's improved instruction. One of the things we're exploring now, if the position continues, is to identify some of the key student groups that the math coach targets, and to get some baseline data. The 3 years has been spent coaching, bringing in new ideas to classrooms. She doesn't have a caseload, so she's not meeting with 3 gifted kids in a corner somewhere. She's meeting with all of the kids. She does some things after school. She does some things before school. She helps with, she'll go in and do some model teaching, which the teacher observes and then picks up. So there's
Well, she does this math Olympiads. My daughter just started that, and I think
Yes.
that's a new program, which I think is very exciting, is
Yes,
it not?
she did that 2 years ago, and she's doing it again this year. So it's the concept of lifting the whole boat as opposed to targeting certain populations. At the same time, it's a good opportunity now that the position is integrated using the Obama funds, which incidentally, when the Obama funds were allocated, the idea was if a program works, the district tries to continue it after the funds dissipate. That's sort of funny. But anyway, it would really be worth the board's while to invite her in and go into detail with some of the things that happen. I think, I respect the ABC's position. I don't agree with it, obviously. But I think it would be a real loss to our kids and the district if you think about the attention we give to reading. Every school has a reading consultant. Elementary teachers are usually very good reading teachers. Mathematics is another ball of wax. There are some very good elementary mathematics teachers. There's also, I heard, a very good mathematics head at Mass Way in the principalship. She knows a lot more about mathematics than I do. But the point is that the model lifts the whole boat. It lifts the issues with kids who are struggling. It lifts the kids who are not struggling, and everyone in between. So I think I know budgets are difficult. I know times are difficult. But if we want to continue to improve what we do, sometimes we have to bite the bullet and do something that I think will benefit the instruction of all kids.
Yes.
So that's my passionate plea.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
just to be, I know you said this, but this position is shared between the 2 schools.
Massway and Mohammed.
But yet
It's
we
not a
have,
full-time
but we have
position for
reading dedicated to each school.
It's 50% Massway,
Right.
50% Mohammed.
Reading is?
No.
Because-
Reading is 100%.
I'm trying to understand why
the
we.
reading is a state guideline, so the
Right.
state has
have
not
to-
kept up with what Dennis is arguing here,
Yeah.
which maybe we
Okay.
should be advocating on that level too.
Yeah.
So the state guideline requires the reading specialist, it
Oh,
does not require
okay,
math
I didn't know that.
specialist.
Yeah.
So, may I ask a question for the ABC then about the position? I definitely see the value of this position, and my question is, you're saying explore models. Do we have any idea if the position were a full-time contract position without benefits, what that figure would be? Do we know?
It's another model.
It's just another model.
Handling it through, a series of consultants you have come in. There's a way you can handle it through Special development activities, I mean, we aren't prepared to.
Okay. I'm just thinking about, I think there's a specific individual who's in mind for this position. There's someone who's been doing it for 3 years successfully.
Oh, yes, of
Um,
course, I mean, I'm not.
You know, I'm
we're
just
not
wondering how we
downgrading her
can
value.
continue that at lower costs, I guess. Any suggestions?
I have a
Well, one of the
question.
discussions we had related to the position was that we felt that it seemed to fall into professional development and that kind of category.
It does.
Right.
I mean, there's no
Okay.
question about it.
So, and we see some costs ending in professional development soon that, you know, maybe could offset
Oh, really?
this position, but you have to be creative.
Based on that, Dennis, this coach, I would think that the teachers after 3 years would come away with some skill level.
They have.
And are we applying all of that skill level? Do we need to have a full-time coach for the same, we don't have a lot of turnover in the elementary school
First of all,
teachers.
it's not a full-time coach, it's a half-time coach.
Okay.
It's half-time at Mastway, half-time at O'Hara.
So, but it's full-time for the elementary school.
It's full-time for the elementary
That's
schools.
right, yeah.
Yes.
So,
I think there are issues with mathematics that are similar to reading, and we address that by having a constant research base in reading with a reading consultant. We don't do that with mathematics. And I think many elementary teachers and the elementary teaching staff is going to change as you move along. I think that resource is just as important to elementary education as a reading consultant is. And certainly we can do without it. We will survive without it. We will do the best we can without it. But I think it's a mistake.
Can we incorporate this individual in with the mentoring that we're doing on an ongoing basis? There's money in the budget for that. Can we invite this person in to help mentor the teachers?
I don't know what you're asking.
I'm suggesting there's money in the budget for mentoring.
Yes.
Can we tie this person into the mentoring program that we've already established a budget for?
Oh, sure. But it doesn't mean that she would be there every day.
Yes, David.
Once a year.
I would also like to point out that the reading specialist is currently in the state guidelines, but when Oyster River added the reading specialist, it wasn't. That we were innovative in adding that, and it since was recognized by the state as something you should have. So this could be a way that we could innovate again.
Yes, Ann?
Do we know if other elementary schools have math coaches?
In 1965, when I was a young teacher, I had a math coach in Lexington, Mass. It's a darn good thing I did, too.
Any other questions? Yes, Tom?
I'm interested in that comparison between reading, which is considered to be fundamental, and the presence of state guidelines for reading instruction. And I think mathematics is essential. I've heard stories about kids going to work in a store and standing at the cash register and not able to make change. I don't want our kids to have that kind of handicap. So I see the value of this math coach. Like Dennis said, I can see those cases where a teacher is not that well versed in math or teaching math, and having the math coach can definitely help.
So the question for Todd, do we have many students in the high school that can't count change back?
None.
I don't think you can answer that.
Okay. Yes, Ann?
Dennis, this is a difficult question. How much of our difficulty delivering math instruction is the math program we're using, and how much of it is the skill level of our staff?
There's no, Chris can probably join in with this, but there's no math program that is ideal. It makes sense from my perspective to find a common program that articulates from grade to grade, and then to have somebody who is in there constantly massaging it, looking at it. For example, we purchased the Everyday Math program, the Common Core edition of the math program, because we saved somewhere in the vicinity of $7,000, and because it pushed us ahead so that we're looking at the Common Core. And there are all sorts of technological resources that she is mastering and then delivering to the teachers bit by bit. I mean, if you meet all teachers, most teachers work incessantly to improve what they do. And with mathematics and the technological pieces right now, it's mind-boggling to get in there and make it all work. But when it works, it really engages kids and improves instruction. And Ellen, I want to keep it separate from the person who's doing it, who is superb, because it's not the person I'm talking about, it's the position that I think is important to establish for the long haul. But it's going to be important to have somebody in the district for elementary school teachers in particular. You go to the middle school and you have teachers who study mathematics and love mathematics and want to be mathematicians. And as my discussions with Jay, it's less of an issue with him because of that fact.
Would you say that the role of this person extends toward, because you've mentioned this, the alignment of the Common Core?
Yes.
And does that also help us align both Meharmet and Mask Way so that
Yes.
we are delivering the same math instruction? And when the kids
Yes.
arrive at the middle school, it's more, we have a uniform expectation.
Something much larger than programs. You're talking about the Common Core curriculum. I just came from a meeting at the Department of Education a few hours ago. I'm on a math task force there. We're talking about implications of the Common Core. And we're talking about implications for the high school curriculum, professional development that's needed for pre-service teachers along with current teachers, and implications for elementary and middle school. And one of the recommendations that's coming from our committee to the departments of education is that we need math coaches at the elementary level and middle school level. So that is coming. Whether or not the recommendation is taken is one thing.
They're a little behind the state, you know.
But another important thing to know is that we need our teachers to be more comfortable with our curriculum and to not look at a program as our curriculum. No program is ever going to match Oyster River's curriculum. We're really happy with Oyster River's math curriculum. We're getting comfortable with it. It'll be an easy transition over to the Common Core because our curriculum is more rigorous than just the GLEs, the grade level expectations. But the more we can make teachers comfortable with it and understand rigorous and relevant and authentic math curriculum and projects, the easier it's going to be for our students to carry those skills on to the middle and high school and be successful. So we really can't focus on programs. That's not the way to go. It has to be what our curriculum is, and then making sure that our teachers understand it, know what it means, what the language means, and make sure they're teaching those pieces out of programs, whatever programs we may be using.
Yes, Ann.
Yeah, and what I've seen over the past couple of years is that it's become so much more engaging, math has, and I don't know whether this is from Mrs. Irving or because of what she's learned, what the teachers have learned from her or what, but the fun games that they're playing, you know, with the mystery houses and measuring every room and the things inside of it. And then I think it was today or yesterday, my daughter came home saying, we're doing a new math thing and we all get 500 coins and we have to know what we have to buy right away. And I bought an umbrella and I bought a pocket full of miracles, and I said, well, how did you know what to buy? And she goes, I don't know, I might not need them or I might need them. And it's like going to be this long fun game that they're going to play that's going to take them through some math adventure, and they might use their pocket full of miracles, or they might not, I don't know, but I think it's making math fun for them, and they're learning in a way that, I mean, gosh, I was totally unengaged in math, and I wasn't a math student, so I think it's exciting, and I don't know if that's Miss Irving's influence.
I'm not gonna use her name. It is the math coach's influence
Okay.
that is.
Maybe I
making-
shouldn't have used that.
From my perspective, and I'm in every classroom every day, so I see it. And it is, and she's not in the room. She was in the room 3 weeks ago, and this stuff is happening.
Yes, Rob?
Yeah, I'm not sure that the recommendation is necessary. I mean, the decision about whether it's beneficial or not is up to you guys, the faculty.
Right.
Our recommendation was to explore different models, not whether it's a 1 or a 0, you have it or you don't have it. Just to mention the money, it's an $82,000 position estimated in your budget packet.
And I created the budget packet.
Do we know how much that's costing Obama right now? Yeah, I mean, is it $82,000, or is it actually costing us more to hire this person or to hire the coach as a full-time person? So we will be spending $82,000 more, and that's our recommendation. Is perhaps you look at, in order to keep that, you look at a different model than hiring as a full-time position.
So it's like 40,000 for each school.
Really go on to the next one?
Who the individual is, it might be less than that. And in this case, I think it would be less than that. 82,000 was looking at a person taking full benefits. So.
I think Rob just clarified what I was gonna say about what we're basically saying is it's not that we don't support the concept.
Yeah, I know, it's money.
It's just the way it's being paid for. Then on to the next item. I'm sure the school board has already talked about somewhat, but there is a need for a comprehensive district-wide K-12 foreign language plan before any additional foreign language staff are hired. And maybe that's already in process, but we do not support the addition of more foreign language faculty at Oyster River until there is such a plan.
Okay. Yes, Megan?
I just want to get clarification. I've heard contradictory information about this. I've heard some folks say there is a plan, and then, I don't know, Lee, what is your assessment? Do we have a plan?
It's a work in progress. There's a report that will be given to the board on December 21.
Okay.
Yes, Jocelyn?
And just to be clear, the only thing that's in the budget that we're looking at is that original 30,000 or whatever for the part-time person. So the current budget doesn't reflect having a full-time world language position.
No, the current
the
budget
0.4.
does not support any.
Not even the 0.4?
The 0.4, no.
Not the 0.4?
No.
Yes, okay.
The current budget does not support the math coach of 85,121.
Right.
Nor the 4/10 of the language teacher, nor the increase of 6/10 of the language teacher, which would be an additional $85,121.
All right, thank you.
Okay, next.
Last one is a repeat.
Yeah, we should discuss.
Can I just say that 25% of the current printing budget for the district is approximately $22,000.
Thank you, Kristen.
Okay.
Because the budget's so detailed, I could figure that out.
Yeah.
Can I just clarify on I think it was consensus of our committee that we support an expansion of foreign language at all grade levels, but that in lieu of a real plan to get us to whatever the objective is, we don't support that current hiring. That was based on Dennis's.
If money was moved around the budget, would you support it if it came from another area of the budget? And put it in foreign languages?
No, there's no plan. What are you doing, where are you doing it at, and what's the
I
outcome?
agree with you, yes.
The objection that we have was that just hiring a partial person or even one full person would not consistently deliver foreign language instruction throughout the period from elementary school through when they're currently starting it in 7th grade. And since we didn't know what the cost of the full rollout would be, it would be unwise to allow that first foot in the door without fully understanding what the cost would be.
Is that addressed in the strategic plan?
No, we do have the vision statement and the educational philosophy, but there are no details about that.
So I'm to understand the plan is to see, over the years, where we would start and how we would end up in the costs in between, how many people it will take and.
Well, I think that you would start with the outcome, what do you want for your students?
Right.
And then you'd build backwards, so.
Go backwards with
maybe
that.
you'd actually start building up your staffing at the middle school level and taking it down to elementary instead of sticking someone in elementary.
Right, how many years will that take and how many people
What
will
is the
that?
outcome you want for academic achievement
What will the
for your
cost
students?
and how are we gonna do it over a certain period of time? Okay, I just wanted to know what you mean by plan, so people know what to come up with to say. Okay.
Okay.
I believe the process now is to go over the recommendations and
Add
ask
to the
school board members
recommendations.
what items they wish to add.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, yes.
I'm just wondering, are we going to have the opportunity tonight to talk about the big picture?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, those items can be added at the end.
Okay,
and,
okay, all right. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? Yes, Ann.
Well, I thought we should put on there 3 things. The technology integrator position, the first grade teacher at Mastway, and the math coach as just discussions, whether we want to have them in the final budget or not. Does that make sense?
Okay. The process we've used is to allow a school board member to bring up the items they want. And then on next December 7th, when you review, we'll go through each of these and you'll vote. There'll have to be a motion and a second to bring that item up for conversation. And then we'll move on through those items. But this is like a brainstorming, bring them out, and we'll just have them here, and then the idea will be to go through that list. So what you are identifying now as a number 5 is add the technology integrator.
Technology integrator, the first grade teacher, and the math coach. That's just what I heard tonight.
That's what you want the board to consider at this next.
That's not me personally, I'm just
Okay,
saying.
no, I mean,
But
okay,
I
what-
think they should be added to this list for discussion.
Well, okay, let's
Am I-
review again the process. What we're really asking now is what decisions does this board want to make on December 7th? Do you want to take a vote on adding a technology integrator? Do you want to take a vote on adding a math coach? Those are the items we're trying to identify. And the discussion will be, there'll be a motion to put it on the table for discussion, and that'd be a second, and then there'll be a discussion, then there'll be a vote, up or down. And you move on to the next item, move on to the next item. So,
Yeah.
what we're trying to generate now is the list. I have 4 on the list already from previous meetings. What desire, I guess probably, the best way probably for the chairs to go around the table and ask people, what would they like to add onto this? And let's focus first on what the Budget Advisory Committee has come up with their list. Are there specific items here from their list that you want to add? And then are there other things that you have that you want to add?
Yes.
I would like to add the first recommendation under the high school, which is the more aggressive plan to increase tuition students. We spent a lot of time talking about that, so I think it has to be on the list. I'd also like to add the recommendation of reducing the district-wide printing budget by 25%. And I would like to add revisiting the flexible district line. Revisiting the flexible district line to optimize enrollment numbers between the elementary schools.
What was your first one? I'm sorry.
The tuition
100
students.
Yes.
I would like to add the ABC's recommendation for a buffer of $1 per square foot, at an average, I guess, of $400,000
For the CIP.
for the CIP.
Could you state that again?
Jocelyn?
To be a CIP or be in the budget?
I think we need to have a buffer in the budget yearly, so it's not a
Okay,
CIP.
what specifically, what are you recommending then?
That we add a buffer,
Add what? How much? What?
$400,000.
Okay. Add $400 to our school budget.
400,000.
We already have 130-something thousand already in it.
For
It's-
CIP.
It's different.
Okay, so you want to add to the budget $400,000 for capital improvement, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
I just have a question related to that. So we're all anxiously awaiting the facility study. Will we have it by then, or are we just gonna kind of make this up as we go? And
We hope to have something by December 21.
okay, but if
And-
not,
And I think when we went into this process, I think I was pretty clear saying that I don't think we're going to have much opportunity to process and to prioritize those recommendations for this year's budget. I thought I was pretty clear on that one.
Lee, is it possible to add to that a stipulation that this money is only spent after a board vote and approval of expenditure of funds?
Okay.
We can
Okay,
discuss that.
You wanted to
Yeah.
add 400,000 for the capital improvement,
So
and
it's,
then,
my intention is that that fund be there in the case of an emergency.
so you're going to ask to raise $400,000 for the case of an emergency.
But is the
We
bathroom
have
an
a,
emergency?
we have a trust fund that
No,
already
The
covers
trust
part
funds
of
for
that.
that, my point is that we have a surplus every year, and we spend so much of it for what quote-unquote are emergencies. So rather than it being a surprise, that the taxpayer should know that there's this money there for unanticipated, and presumably when we get the facility study, we'll know what these things are.
Okay, I mean, let's be clear, we have $400,000 set aside, but it's not budgeted for anything specifically. Is that-
Can I
I'm just
help?
trying to get a.
Megan-
I'm trying to help. I think we need to plan for capital improvement.
Right.
Every
This
single
is,
year, we
yeah.
need to budget. We have to come up with a dollar amount. I think that's $400,000 per the ABC. I think there's another thing, and that's what I'm calling a buffer, a budgetary buffer, that in general, districts budget in 1 to 2.5% above and beyond, just for unforeseen, it could, who knows what. You get an influx of students, you have, changes, right? And that I think is completely separate than what this 400,000 is. And that's, to me, a different topic.
Jocelyn?
that's my understanding about the 400,000, and I'm seeing ABC members not. Okay, but your buffer, is it our understanding that the current budget we're looking at includes planning for about a $500,000 surplus? Because that could be the buffer.
We
That's-
have
that's-
500,000, I believe. I guess I have to have Sue speak to this, which is hiding in the back there. You better come forward because there's some questions for you.
Speak to the mic.
I don't know, microphone.
Been put into the
Speak
revenue
to the
side,
mic.
500,000. Is that what you're asking?
No,
Yeah.
what- I couldn't hear you.
Typically, on the revenue side, we would see 500,000 being anticipated as a fund balance, yes. Even though it's been larger than that.
That I'm all
it's
set.
Fund balance.
As a fund balance.
But I'm all set, I don't
You-
have anything
We
to
will strike that, 400,000? Okay.
Just
Oh,
to
no.
be,
If,
Are you?
if,
That's not what you mean.
there is a trust fund
Speak
set
for
up
Ann.
already. And I think it has 75,000, maybe. David, how much is in the trust
Point
fund?
of order,
Yeah.
we're,
I mean,
point
Sue
of
would
order.
probably know. but-
Point of order. We're adding items to this
Yeah,
agenda.
that's-
We're not discussing the items on the
Okay.
agenda. So add an item,
Right.
and then next time we discuss it.
Thank you.
Very good.
so the,
This is- So do you, the 400,000 is
I want
added
to
or
take
not?
the ABC's recommendation that we have $1 per square foot that is put into the budget for CIP improvements.
That's the
For the CIP, it's a warrant article.
Yes.
$1 per square foot.
I know what you're saying.
It's
And that's
up
the
for
400.
discussion, so you can change it.
Right.
You're doing it right.
Fine, warrant article.
Yes.
I have one to add, others have already mentioned, but I wanted to add, but there's one more I think we should discuss, rebidding the Aramark contract, facilities contract. I think that was on the list of one of the previous recommendations from the committee.
What's that again? How would you
Rebidding
like
the
to
Ara-
state that? Revisit?
I think
or-
they said rebidding the Aramark contract, if I'm, let's go back.
And presently, what the earmark contract does, would you review? Okay, well, I won't discuss it, but just put it, read it. I mean, it's just, you have a director and you have some supplies and things that we purchase. Okay, fine.
That's right. Any other ones?
Did we add the technology integrator? No.
Yeah. That's the first thing Ann
Yes.
said.
Okay, I need to review Ann's again. You want to add the technology integrated at the middle school?
And what else, Ann? Yeah,
Three of
The
them.
first grade teacher that they
Okay,
recommended.
grade 1 at Massway.
The math.
And the math coach?
And the math coach. Okay.
I think we should look at the reduction in teachers at the high school, because I don't think we're gonna get 100 students this coming year.
It doesn't say this coming year.
Huh?
That's not the recommendation. The recommendation is 100 students in the next 2 to 3 years.
Okay, I think that we should look at the budget and reduce it down by $500,000. Yes.
I know what we're trying to do right now in terms of making the list, but, you know, if we're gonna have a discussion before we end tonight about the big picture, which I think we all kind of need to come back, I really feel like we're in the weeds and probably, you know, if you're saying this, other board members might have some ideas. I think we need to have that discussion, and we could probably start it tonight, because we have some new information from the town governments. We have some tax rates for 2011 that have been set. And I think we need to talk about that. I mean, we can talk about $22,000 here and $15,000 here, but, you know, the elephant in the room is, where are the tax rates for the towns, and what's the community telling us? So do we want to start that conversation tonight, or do we want to put this on the list? Because that's a
I
big
think we could
conversation.
identify them on the list and start the conversation tonight. I mean, what I've heard, most of these people wanting to add, I haven't heard a lot of the subtractions or deductions, like we've heard now 500,000.
Okay, let's get
So-
going.
There have been recommendations. I mean, at first, we were talking about recommendations from the Advisory Budget Committee. Are you done looking at their recommendations? Are you now looking at the ones you want to add? We at the point, I guess the question is, are there any other recommendations from the Budget Advisory Committee you wish to add?
Jim couldn't be here tonight, he's sick, but he mentioned about the buses.
That's
And-
already on his list.
Right, but I wanna change it a little bit. I wanna say that we should look at possibly buying one.
But we will discuss that
Okay.
when we get there.
It's on the list, you can bring it up
Okay.
tonight.
So, Lee, there's gonna be more recommendations in this final report. And so when we get those, then we can talk about those. Okay, because, for example, like
you've
the
already-
kindergarten question, I would wanna talk about, but I don't wanna talk about it until I hear what you have to say about it.
Well, I think you have their minutes, and what I understand, there's nothing different than what's in the minutes that's going to occur.
But you
Is that
just-
correct?
Well, it's kinda like there was a new piece, at least on the
Well, there's going to
kindergarten.
be broad recommendations that they're separating out kind of broad ones from the specific ones. So there'll be some overarching recommendations that will have to do with the budget process. If that's what you're asking.
Okey-dokey.
Yes, Jocelyn?
This might help in terms of thinking of the Budget Committee's recommendations. So some of them impact the budget today, and we need to talk about those as soon as possible. Some of the other recommendations have to do with the process, and have to do with more, I will call them strategic initiatives. And we don't have to talk about those today, unless we plan on building them into the budget. If they involve studies, we need to
Right.
build that into the budget. We know we have a surplus. So I don't think we need to talk about the strategic directions unless it directly impacts the budget that we're looking at today. And we don't know if it does, because we're exploring various options if we choose to. So I think we need to separate out and really just line up the items we need to talk about that impact this budget, the ones that are quantifiable, otherwise.
Okay. So I guess the last recommendation was to reduce the budget by 500,000. Is there anything else people want to consider?
I'm sorry if I missed this, do we include the bathrooms at the middle school as a CIP? I mean, is that,
I have
could.
$1 per square foot for CIP in a warrant article, that's what I have.
so the interpretation is that that's included?
There will be money in the CIP, should we choose to do that. And, you know, we can choose to prioritize based on the
Is this
facility
the time,
study.
Leon, where you would like us to tell you what our thoughts are on perhaps what our bottom line is?
I think that's the time.
Okay.
Can I just? I'm
Come on,
sorry.
let her talk. Let her
Well, I
say
just-
something about it.
All right, that's fine.
Let
Yeah,
her-
I think it's time,
I
I mean,
mean,
people,
this is driving
we've got to
me
know
crazy.
where we stand here, and we've been trying to deal with the trees, maybe we need to get to the forest, you know?
I, based on a couple of criteria, one being a declining enrollment, two being no substantial increases in programming, I think we need to start with the budget for the 2011-2012 year, the adopted budget, subtracting the surplus, which my understanding is that's 1.4 million.
I guess I'd have to see what Sue has to say.
This year.
That I projected
Mhm.
is not a million.
So it's not 1.4, it's 1.
What we actually had last year was 1.5.
So taking the adopted budget less and that includes the busing, the buses came out of the previous year, as well as the incentive to retire came out of the previous year. So the adopted budget, which is 36,796,521 minus Sue's assessed $1 million. Adding back in the shortfall from the state of 330,000, and then what I've already suggested to you, actually I haven't, but a buffer of between 1% and 2%. So that's,
So you need to give me a bottom line, I don't know what you're talking about, I guess, at this point, so what are you saying?
I am saying, it comes in at roughly,
Give me your numbers, so I don't know.
it's 36,796,521 minus $1 million plus 330
35.
plus 356,265 gives us 356,265, which is a buffer of 1%.
That's the 330.
So the number's $36,127,521.
Can you repeat that?
I
So
think I missed
what
your
you did,
5%.
I'm sorry.
Can you just repeat the number?
I took the adopted budget from 2011 and 12 minus the projected surplus of 1 million, which is obviously in flux, adding back in roughly $330,000, which was the shortfall from the state. And in addition to that, I think we need to have, as Megan was talking about before, a budgetary buffer, and I think 1% is plenty, and we'll see how we do with that. And that number,
That's the number.
364,
$36,483,521.
I don't,
1%.
could you still tell me the bottom line again?
$36,483,521.
720 what?
One.
Seems funny the end of the one. This is so hard. We need to do it.
That's 36 million,
Okay.
483.
Yes.
I'd just like to point out that that would be a reduced budget then, because our collective bargaining increases then are not included in that. And the increases in
again, we have
healthcare are
a
also not
decline in enrollment, and we have no substantial program increases, and I can't justify an increase. We have to tighten our belt somewhere.
So essentially, that is requiring $1,037,386, I'm sorry, $1,137,846 to be removed from this budget, that's what you're asking.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
I'm sorry.
$1,137,000, what do I have here? $1,137,846, roughly speaking.
What number are you using for the current budget request, Lee? What number did you use for the current budget
I
request?
just took the 37,000, what we presently have at the bottom line, 021,367.
I got 537,846, that's why I'm asking.
The number you gave me was 36,483,521, is that correct?
That's what Krista got.
And I subtracted that from the 37,021,367.
That's not, help me, that's not 1 million, right?
What did I do?
It's 537,846. It's a reduction of 537,846.
That makes more sense.
I guess I don't know.
I've got my own numbers.
That's almost 2%.
I like the million number.
That's right, right? I
Yeah.
didn't, okay. I'm not the math, my kids are better at math than me, but 537,846.
I don't know.
What's the reduction dollar amount?
540.
What's the percentage?
$540,000.
540.
Yeah, there we go, 540.
Increase.
It's 2%.
It's a 2% increase.
Was that 1.5?
That's the reduction.
It's 504,000.
537,846.
Yeah, that's what I got.
Yeah. 537.
That's the reduction.
846.
Just say 540.
Yes,
Easier.
Jocelyn.
And I just want to be clear, and that number is coming off the budget that we have in front of us, not including the CIP, possible CIP of 400,000, not including the world language, not including the things we've talked about
Including
tonight.
anything you might want to add back in?
And anything,
Well,
okay,
because
okay, so it's the
my point
budget
being
that's
that-
here.
that
Right.
Because this doesn't represent any new programming.
Right.
And it doesn't represent any reflection of our decreasing enrollment, we have to start somewhere.
Yes.
So I have some numbers too, but I want to talk about them, not to necessarily have everybody write them down, because I want to think about yours a little more. But when we first looked at this budget, we were looking at it as a 0.6% increase over last year. Since that time, we've had some new data that's come up, and more that I'd like to talk about that I thought we should have started the conversation with, but we're in the middle of it, so let's just go. So I did something very similar, and when I was trying to compare the budget in front of us to what we are going to spend this year, since we now know that there's a surplus. And when I try to compare apples to apples, sound like Rob here, I don't come up with a 0.6% increase. What I come up with is about a 2% increase. And I came up with that, subtracting out the surplus from what was approved last year, adding in the warrant articles, because we're not really including warrant articles here. So I took the general fund that was improved, minus the $1 million surplus, plus all the warrant articles, and plus the $15,000 extra. When you actually get that number, which is about almost $36 million, and you compare it to what we're looking at, this isn't a 0.6% increase. It's around 2%, which I think we can, whether my numbers are exact, you're understanding where we're going here. If we add in the $400,000 CIP, which it sounds like is money well spent, because we can probably save money later on if we actually take care of our facilities in the way that we need to, now we're talking about a 3% increase. And this does not include any new programs. And as Ann pointed out, this is tricky because we also have a declining enrollment. We also have a very difficult financial situation. We also have towns that are setting tax rates that have gone up. We have the town of Durham, at least their proposed budget reflects, I don't know, a 3% increase or something like that. So we have this increasing burden, tax burden. And, minimum here with the CIP, we're still looking at a 3% increase. So I think the big issue here, and here's where a strategic plan would come in handy, is that have we reached the maximum for our taxpayers in these 3 towns, and what will happen if we go too much beyond that. And I think we all have the anecdotal stories. People will leave town. People have left town. Less families are moving in, and how does that impact our schools? Suddenly we have less enrollment, and suddenly we're trying to figure out how to get kids from other towns into our high schools so we can keep up certain courses. So, you know, this is just, you know, I don't know, but somebody needs to look at the structure. We either need to accept that our budget is going to go up 3% a year by just maintaining what we're doing today. But we all know that there are expectations beyond that, that we would improve our world language, and one could argue, as research does, that that would improve our test scores, that we need to make other improvements, maybe this math coach, who knows. But how are we ever going to get there where the voters are going to accept that when each year minimum, it looks like we're on this path to 3%? And even without that, what are the one-time costs we have? What about debts that was retired? That's not included in this budget. What about the one-time costs that have been rolled over? So we kind of end up with this budget going up and not very much to show for it, I think. You know, I mean, we have great schools, but I think the people in our community want more. They want different programming. They want advanced programming. But I don't know how we're ever going to get the voters to sign off on that when we're already at 3% minimum to keep doing what we're doing. So I think until we have a long-term plan on where we're going and how it's going to impact students and how it's going to impact the community as our tax rate continues to go up, it's really difficult to talk about increasing this budget. The piece we've missed tonight is how are the tax rates going up in our 3 communities, and how much more of a burden are we placing on the community members, and have we reached that tipping point? And you know, that's up for debate. But the way I see it, we either need to accept that this is all we're ever going to do with the 3%. We're going to continue to increase the cost regardless of enrollment and risk losing people. Or we're going to look at the structure we use to deliver education and maybe come up with changes to our model that allow us to be more cost efficient. I don't know what those are. I mean, we have some on the table. So I tend to agree with Anne that until we actually have that plan, till we have that on the table, we need to start working with a more reasonable increase for the taxpayers until we can actually justify increasing the size of the budget. And I think that there is the will for people to have new programs, but I'm not sure we can charge any more. So I'm not sure we can keep building on this. And one way is the revenue, and I think that makes sense, getting some other students. But you know, I don't know about this $500,000 number, but I think there's probably something to that, and it's something that I would consider. That was a really long-winded, I'm sorry. I have a lot of numbers over here.
Okay, anything else added to the list? Are you making a recommendation as far as the dollar amount?
No, I'm just thinking about what Ann said. But the other thing is what is the update from the community, from the town councils we heard? What did they tell us about what the voters are willing to accept? A brief summary of that would be helpful, because I wasn't able to go to Lee and Madbury. And then how will this affect the tax rate? We've asked that every time. The voters want to understand. It's really weird just to look at this number. What does this mean? If I own a house valued at $200,000 and my taxes are going up X because of the town of Durham, if the school does this, how much more am I going to pay a year?
So, Sue, could you explain what you're going to have prepared for them for the December 7th meeting?
I'll take this number that we currently have and tell you what that looks like for all 3 towns for tax impact. And then I'll just give you scenarios if you take out 100, 200, 300, 400, 500.
Could you send that out next week?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yeah, would that be a comparison of a home that's worth $250,000 and $400,000? Okay, thank you.
Would that be helpful? Is that what you're asking?
Will that include the town's proposed new budgets being approved? Do we have estimates
We
from
don't
the
have
towns?
that.
Okay,
No,
because
this is projection of the budget that we're talking about now.
So the 211 tax rate information that each town has on their website now, that's not based on the budgets that they're proposing.
It's
last year.
This is based on last year.
It is, I think it is, a proposed budget. But it includes $1,600,000 that we gave back this past year.
Right.
So that is not gonna, we've got $1 million going back this year, which will affect next year's tax rate.
Right.
So, But if Sue does the comparison of our $200,000 home and a $400,000 home, it will show you the dollar amounts
Okay,
that will be
I think that's
increased.
helpful.
Okay,
Yes.
so, Anne, I see, okay, your analysis was basically, I think you looked at what we adopted for this year. You backed out the anticipated surplus. You took into account the state, that we needed to make a 330 in the state, okay. And then you added a buffer.
I said 1%.
1%, and you
Maybe
came
it
up
should
with
be
this
more, I don't
number,
know.
and then, okay, we did the math, and it was 537. So, okay, we're saying too, we want to include in this budget potentially, we have to discuss this, but potentially another 400,000 for, the facilities, upgrades, it's capital improvement. Potentially, let's just be conservative and say the 80-some thousand for the math coach, potentially. So, let's say another 500,000 we want to add back, and that would basically almost negate what you just said. So I think we need to be aggressive and see what it would look like if we added these things in and still kept, we'd have to decrease what's already there by 500 additionally. So it is over $1 million in my mind that we need to look at in order to add back in those other items. I think that needs to be examined to see what impact it would be. If we're saying that we think we're going to want the math coach, we're going to want facilities, we're going to want these other things, it's just, I'd like to see that. I'd like to see what that would look like. Maybe I'm missing one.
I have some notes from all three towns. They're brief. I'd be happy to share them. These are the thoughts from all of, from Madbury, Durham, and Lee. The thoughts that came out of Madbury were, they had concerns about staffing levels. They had concerns about tuitioning in students, our capacity, it being equitable and judicious. They wanted to make sure that we were always considering wages and ensuring that they were in line and in balance with wages of other teaching professionals in the state. Benefits, the feeling was staff should share more of the expense of benefits. They questioned the value of tenure. There was questions about the bond, more questions about insurance and benefits, more questions about staffing, hopefully through attrition. We will replace teachers at a lower step. Operations should follow a business model, and perhaps we should hire a professional contract negotiator for future contract negotiations. In Durham, Oyster River, ORCSD by the numbers, was brought up by a number of counselors, and the question was, is it possible to decrease the budget by 10 to 15% while improving student performance? Consider busing, outsource busing. District salary, staffing should shift with retirements while maintaining teaching mentors. Oyster River by the numbers again came up. We're over the state average. Can savings of $3 million be realized? An audit, request for making it available when it's presented in November, December timeframe. Sustainability, use UNH for clubs rather than paying a stipend. Health benefits, would like a comparison within the state of what other school districts are paying for health benefits. HMOs should be the goal. What areas of improvement are desired when counselor asked, and music was suggested. Again, send, when the audit is presented, when we have our financial audit, send it and post it to the towns. Communications, contact town governments with updates, keep in communication loop. Maybe they would include info in their town updates. And Lee, there was an appreciation for face-to-face communication. They received correspondence on the following topics: Oyster River by the numbers, and concerns about tuitioning students regarding the cost to the town for the cost we charge versus the cost per student that we pay. It was stated that 20 out of $30 goes to schools, and then an audience member asked a question about our current enrollment numbers. And that's a summary of the comments made. Yes, Megan.
I just want to say something. We talked a lot about, top line, increasing revenues, and I think that would be optimal if we could have some kind of assurance I don't know that, that's the problem. That's the ideal, to avoid having to do this type of reduction. So I just want to throw that out.
I don't have, I was looking on my computer and I couldn't find it. Our budget goals, those, I don't know if they were in our thing, but I couldn't find it, but I was trying to refresh my memory on them. And I hate to try to paraphrase them, but I do think they were to put the needs of the students first while,
You want me to read it?
oh, you found it? Thank you,
To
Krista.
develop a school budget within school board policies that addresses educational needs of students first while giving due consideration to the recommendations of the advisory budget committee and the fiscal restraints faced by the Oyster River Cooperative School District community.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So we do need to give, I think when we give just a flat number like that, are we giving due consideration to the needs of the students and what they need?
I think we are.
I
We've
mean,
got declining numbers and we have more money. We have fewer students to educate with more money. I don't know how else you could look at it.
Okay, can I ask one? I guess I'm gonna need some further direction here. December 7th is going to be an important day. I wanna make sure I have my homework correct. There are two items here on this budget. Number 13 that I have is listed as reduce the budget by $500,000, which you submitted as an idea. Then I have one here, reducing it by $537,846. Do you want to see both of those, or is one or the other sufficient?
One or the other.
Well, I suggested that we look at by the total, those two numbers together, because we're talking about adding stuff back in.
Now, first of all, I'm asking, do we want, do I have to produce a budget with a cut of 500 and then produce one with 537, or is one or the other sufficient at this point?
You're suggesting $1 million?
I think we should look at $1 million, and then
What
look at
would a $1 million
five-
budget would look like? A cut for $1 million, okay?
Or top line revenue produce, if we can quantify some of that.
We can't do that for September, so that's off the table.
Yes, Jocelyn?
I could support looking at a reduction in 500 and seeing what that looks like. I think that's probably a good starting point to try to understand, and do our due diligence. What does that look like? And then if you need to add back in from there,
How much
I'm not sure
effort
about
would
a
it be to
million.
look at $1 million and 500,000 for those two?
We'll first see how many people, sorry.
Okay.
Missionary.
We'd like to see a budget.
I have just one other question, and it's on and off topic, but in 1999, 2000, our enrollment was 2,300 students, and our staffing was 133, roughly, staff
Teachers.
members.
Teachers.
And this year, we're at 2021 with staffing at 189. I appreciate that the requirements of the state have changed, and our obligations have changed. But I'd like to understand, what does it really take to staff our district? I think that's a valuable piece of information.
I'm just trying to get direction. I mean, we were getting things from all over the place here, so, I mean, I'm hearing a request. I mean, I've got all these down here, but I guess I need some clearer direction. The staffing will take care of itself if I have to come back with $500,000 in cut. So I'm not going to spend I've only got a short window here. And I need to clarify what my work is with my team. So give me direction. I guess probably the best thing to do is to have a motion as to which cut you want me to come in with. One.
Yes.
Make a motion to have the superintendent and his leadership team present to the school board a proposed budget that is less than $500,000 less than the current proposed budget.
Any second on that?
Second.
Second, any discussion? I asked the question, is 500,000 enough?
Well, it's the difference between 500 and 540.
No,
really.
no, I
Well, it's
don't mean
because you're
that.
talking
Five-
about, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
My issue is this, we just talked about all these things we wanna add back in. Okay, that's gonna negate that 500, okay, that's about,
If we add them back in.
we're going to. I mean, I feel like, I think we have to have capital improvement, we can't neglect our schools like that. I mean, I don't know what we're gonna do, I don't know, I'm just saying it seems
But,
reasonable.
because the recommendation for long-term planning is 400, doesn't mean it has to go in next year. I think my advice would be to wait till you see the plan, the facilities plan, and make some. Once you see that and digest, then you start making some plans, you start next year planning on it. You're putting everything on your plate, and we're getting very, very unfocused as a process. So, I think the issue is, I mean, what are some of the priorities? To me, it's the water system at the school. If you want to add in the bathrooms at the middle school, it is, could be a warrant article. And then have time to digest the facilities plan, and you have all next year to plan for that.
Okay.
And it could be part of that budget development. So get it off the table, and it's not as if the roof is falling in, but we understand it has to be addressed, but let's do it in a strategic way, okay? And so then that brings us back to here. We have a motion to cut $500,000 to see what that would look like, and to be presented at December 7th.
December 7th.
That's our meeting, December 7th. I mean, you're asking me to do this work for December 7th. That's what I'm trying to get clarified here.
Well, we don't know what we're gonna add in, and I made the motion that 500,000 would take care of some of the things. And I didn't even recommend, I don't know if I'd follow the lead of cutting the technology budget. I don't know about that. I would say the 500,000 should come from different areas. And I mean, I understand what Megan's saying, but I don't know if we should consider taking away more and then adding back when we're not even thinking about adding back because of what Lee just said. I don't know if we're gonna do all the capital improvements. Yes.
But the point is, we shouldn't be, it doesn't necessarily make sense for us to be in the weeds and trying to get to that number. It's better to let the superintendent and the team pull that number together.
You're doing two things. You're setting a bottom number, and you're cherry picking along the way, I mean, either give me a number and stay out of it, and I'll come in and show you what it looks like. And if you want to maneuver it from there, fine. But, you can't do both. I mean, we've only got a short window here.
Yes.
Okay, I take Lee's point. I think I support having Lee look at a $500,000 decrease in the working budget.
Okay. Yes.
Can I just add that if the rationale about reducing the budget $500,000 was that there was no new programming and no new funding in the budget. If we decide to add that back to make another increase, then we are adding new programs and new funding. So the rationale is still there. Even if the number goes back to where it was, the rationale is still there.
So Lee's question to us is.
There's a motion on the table.
Oh, there is, what is the motion on the table?
To reduce the budget by $500,000.
For the cost of the meeting.
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay. The vote for that motion of reducing the budget by $500,000 and have Lee look at it.
It's actually to present a plan.
Present a plan.
Approve the plan. Yeah.
Present it.
Not actually.
Okay, all those in favor? All those against? And against. Okay.
So at the
That's
December
just-
7th
okay.
meeting, I will present what a cut of $500,000 looks like in the present budget.
Any other? Okay.
And then I assume at that point, after you see that and have your conversations, you can then go back to the other items that were listed here, and probably some of these I will have touched upon. I will identify those if I have.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Anything else?
I'm all done.
Hold on, anything from the ABC people?
Thank you, ABC.
Yes.
Thank you, ABC people.
Just have one point that I think might have been missed. Understanding that we're not gonna get 100 tuition students in September. Todd has already told us he feels confident that we'll have a net increase of 12 next year. And if we could get a net increase of 40, it would be $500,000.
Wow.
But even the 12 is
But Lisa,
$150,000.
when I listened, when I did the math while you were saying it, it's a net increase of 2, because your entering class was.
The entering class is not paying tuition. If you're making up for a decline by adding tuition students, you are getting additional tuition.
So right now there are 48 tuition students. 5 seniors are graduating, it drops to 43, but assuming that there'll be 17 incoming freshmen, that brings it up to 60, so all more than that. Yes, Jocelyn?
The extra 12, is that taken into account in the budget process, or we're not looking at revenues at all?
No.
So,
I can't really plan a budget on what is
right,
not certain.
right.
Sue, you've projected how many students from Barrington on the revenue side?
I will use the extra 12 and project the 60. So I'll
Okay.
bump up the revenue side.
So 60, she's already projected that inside the revenue figure.
She just said she will do it.
Yeah, okay.
And can we see the revenue numbers on the 7th?
The budget committee hasn't seen the revenue side.
Yeah, I think it's you at last meeting, but I'll give you a revised one.
Yeah.
Because we worked on that today.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Any other business tonight? Then motion to adjourn,
Motion to adjourn.
I second it. And any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of adjournment? We're adjourned.